Good evening, everybody. I'll call the September 15th, 2022 council meeting to order and want to welcome Pastor Steve Kreloff from Lakeside Community Chapel to give our invocation. I'd ask everyone to rise and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor.
Lord, we thank you for your many blessings, and especially the blessing of living in a free and wonderful country. And we pray for our council meeting tonight, for each member of the board, that you'll give them wisdom, insight as they make decisions. May every decision be based upon integrity and principles of honesty, principles of all the things that would come under the category of justice. So we pray that those who will be honored tonight will be encouraged and well-deserved of this honor. This we pray in your name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Pastor Kreloff. We appreciate you being here as always. I want to introduce the dais. On my far right is City Manager John Jennings.
Good evening.
Councilmember Albritton.
Good evening.
Vice Mayor Beckman.
Good evening.
Councilmember Bunker.
Good evening.
Councilmember Teixeira.
Good evening.
And our City Attorney, David Margolis.
Good evening.
We have a couple service awards to start out the evening. As I call your name, if you could come forward. First of all, for Employee of the Month for August 2022, Joe Marshall from Solid Waste.
Joe Marshall, Solid Waste Equipment Operator, August 2022, Employee of the Month. In the words of a coworker, Mr. Marshall is always willing to do what it takes to help out fellow employees in the solid waste department. Joe is always a team player and has helped keep the transfer station running as smooth as possible as the team faces short staffing issues and equipment shortages due to the repair problems. Joe has been able to bring morale and positive energy to all around whenever he walks in the room. These are just a few of the reasons why I think Joe Marshall should be voted Employee of the Month. Congratulations, Joe, on a job well done, and nothing speaks higher than a fellow coworker praising your name. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Joe. Here you go.
Joe, thank you for all you do for the city. Joe also asked just for a moment to speak to the council. He has been instrumental in the Greenwood Panthers for years, so he just wanted to give a quick update. So we're going to go a little out of order and just, you've got the floor, Joe.
Yes. The items that I was going to present to the council has not arrived.
Okay.
So they're en route, and
to be continued.
yes, I'll probably just wait for
Citizens to be heard?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Next, for Employee of the Month for September 2022, Joanne Palumbo from Engineering. Joanne, hopefully I didn't butcher your last name. How do you pronounce it properly? Palumbo, okay, good.
Joanne Palumbo, Parking Facility and Security Aide, September 2022, Employee of the Month. While Joanne Palumbo was working her assigned parking lot, Marina Lot 30, she witnessed some individuals getting into an argument at the PSTA bus stop at the Marina. The argument escalated when one of the individuals pulled two knives from the back of his pants. Joanne knew that this problem was rapidly changing to something quite dangerous. Joanne, without hesitation, radioed for the Clearwater Police Department to respond and explained in detail the situation at hand. The Clearwater Police Department arrived quickly on the scene thanks to Joanne's detailed information and got the individual that was wielding the knives into custody. Thanks to Joanne's quick actions, she provided a safe and secure area at the PSTA Marina bus stop for others. Congratulations, Joanne, on a job well done, and thank you for always looking out for the citizens and employees of the City of Clearwater. Frank V. Hibbard, Mayor of Clearwater.
Thank you so much.
Joanne, thank you so much. Glad that resulted in nothing bad.
I know, exactly. Thank you.
Next, if I could have Sharon Jank, the Regent of the Clearwater Daughters of the American Revolution, come forward for the Constitution Week proclamation. Great. You all come.
Mayor, can you say a few words?
Why don't I read the proclamation and then you can
yes.
say a few words.
Thank you.
Okay? Good evening, ladies. Thank you for being here. Whereas September 17th, 2022 marks the 234th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America, and whereas the week closest to the anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution is traditionally designated throughout the United States as Constitution Week, and whereas it is appropriate and proper to recognize the significance of this document upon its anniversary with patriotic celebrations and readings, and whereas all citizens should not only appreciate but also preserve and defend the principles of American government as expressed by the Constitution. Now therefore, I, Frank V. Hibbard, Mayor of the City of Clearwater, Florida, on behalf of the Clearwater City Council, do hereby proclaim September 17th through the 23rd, 2022 to be Constitution Week in Clearwater.
The DAR.
Could you come over to the mic so everybody can hear you at home as well?
The DAR were the ones who originally petitioned with President Dwight D. Eisenhower to sign into public law that September 17th through 23rd would be Constitution Week. And President D. Eisenhower on August 2nd, 1956 did proclaim it and went into law. We were here just to remind everybody that the Constitution is that the Constitution is the basis of America's great heritage and the foundation for a way of life, and to emphasize U.S. citizens' responsibility to protect it, defend it, and preserve it always. And we have 23 pocket Constitution books we will leave in the back on the table if anybody would like them.
Thank you very much. And all you do. Let me give you the proclamation. There is a rise right here, so just be very careful. People trip all the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Why don't you come up, ladies? Want to stand up,
Sure.
council? We can. Can you go wide?
Real wine.
Scooch in here, Barb. I'll scooch this way.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Next, if I could have Melanie Yin come forward for the Florida Climate Week proclamation. Melody is our sustainability specialist. Whereas in 2022, the United Nations reports that harmful global warming gas emissions over the last decade are the highest ever recorded, providing the scientific evidence to support such statements. And whereas Florida homes, people, and economy are increasingly at risk from hurricanes, storm surges, and floods, While prolonged periods of extreme heat have a devastating effect on the health of Floridians, and whereas Florida's electric grid and transport systems are primarily powered by fossil fuels, responsible for more than 80% of the state's global warming emissions, which require rapid transitions to zero emissions renewable energy sources, and whereas VOLO Foundation is committed to inform and educate Floridians about the urgency of the climate crisis so that citizens may act to protect themselves, their families, and their businesses. And whereas Florida Climate Week is a free virtual summit aimed at raising the public's awareness on the causes and consequences of global warming and discuss how to work on solutions that ensure a sustainable planet for future generations. Now therefore, I, Frank V. Hibbard, Mayor of the City of Clearwater, Florida, on behalf of the Clearwater City Council, do hereby proclaim October 3rd through the 7th, 2022 to be Florida Climate Week in Clearwater.
Thank you so much,
Ms.
Mayor.
Chen.
I'm just, on behalf of Volo Foundation, wishes to thank the City of Clearwater for proclaiming the first week of October from 3rd to 7th, Florida Climate Week. Volo is a philanthropic nonprofit foundation created in 2014 with a mission to accelerate change and global impact by supporting science-based climate solutions, enhancing education, and improving health. Florida Climate Week 2022 is a virtual event that focuses on the path to sustainability with the increasing impact of flooding and sea level rise due to greenhouse gas emissions. Florida has become exceptionally vulnerable to climate change in the whole country. That is the reason why the proclamation is really meaningful for Volo Foundation and the residents of Florida. The virtual event is open to public with free registration, and for more information, visit floridaclimateweek.org. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Yen. And I apologize to everybody. I'm battling a little bit of a cold, so I'm a little raspy tonight. I would ask if there are any amendments to the minutes of the September 1st, 2022 council meeting.
Move to approve the minutes.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Any amendments to the August 4th, 2022 special council meeting? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes of August 4th?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. This time I'll open it up to citizens to be heard. If there are any citizens in the audience that would like to speak to any item that is not on the agenda, you can find agendas in the back of the room to my right. We ask you to fill out a comment card, state your name for the record, and we respectfully ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes.
It's good to be here before you. My name is Eliseo Santana. I'm a resident of Clearwater. I live in 1400 Byram Drive. And I just want to basically speak and say thank you to the city for spending a lot of the resources to try and bring about a flavor of the Hispanic community in the Cleveland area. That area that for the last 2 or 3 years we've been having some neighborhood meetings, some interactions with the community in the city to try and develop and be able to bring a magnet to that area, to be able to get that economics going, and to have the citizens, the Hispanic citizens, have a place that we can identify and be able to say that this is something we're going to work to enhance and thereby create a better city. So I just want to say thank you for that effort and the work, and I definitely wanted to continue. And I want you to know that I, as president of LULAC, the largest Hispanic group in the United States, and the council that we have here that I'm the president of is the largest council in the state of Florida, with many members, myself included, are residents in this city. And we want to work with you to make sure that this is a success, not just for the local area, but for the whole city. I have a concern. There's been some thoughts and rumors, I don't know where it's coming from necessarily, but that says that the name Mercado is up in question, that that may be removed for one reason or another. Reconsider that. Stay the course that we have steered, that we have concentrated and worked with for quite a while, because this is the right way. The Hispanic community, we don't normally get up and we stir the pot, or we don't necessarily demand things, but we have, over the last years, thought that this was going to happen. And this is something that we prize. So I want to thank you for listening to me. And just keep in mind that when we bring this flavor into the city, we bring in the economics, not just of the local community, not just of Pinellas County, but we can become an attractor that would also influence that other development that we're doing here. So we can work together to make a better city. This is my city, our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Santana.
Of course, it all fails in 1 second, right? Hold on 1 second. How do you do this? It's embarrassing. If someone else wants to go.
Technology is great when it works. Lousy when it doesn't.
Me again. On behalf of the Greenwood Panthers, of course, my application is with the city of Clearwater, but one of my passions, or my passion is volunteering in the community, primarily in the North Greenwood community. And tonight I just want to extend my thanks to the commission and or the council on your continued support of the Greenwood Panthers, and you've been doing that since 1984. And it's our hope that we continue that relationship for many, many years to come. Our previous season, we had a couple of championship football teams, also grand champions in the cheerleading, and wanted to present you with a small token of our appreciation.
Who do you have with you tonight?
Nita Poinsett, she's secretary and treasurer.
Demarian Holland and Delasia Holland, football players and children.
Welcome.
And also,
There's a little one behind.
also one of the gentlemen that's been instrumental also in supporting the Greenwood Panthers over the years, so far as with solid waste and general services, is Director Mr. Earl Gloucester, and I also like to acknowledge him tonight.
Are those like big rings?
They look like
Oh
rings.
my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Assistant City Manager.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Can I look?
Wow,
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, it's huge.
beautiful.
And it came right out.
They're heavy. Oh my gosh.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
That's right. Thank you.
Our city attorney is determining whether this breaks the gift limits, I think.
I'm not going to get too attached.
City attorney will comment later.
Is Mr. Aide
Jim Hallios?
Director of Parks and Rec?
He's not here.
I did not see him. I think he did not have an item tonight. Thank you, Joe.
That's pretty special. Okay. Good evening. My name is Kathy Flaherty, and I'm here tonight because I am against changing the name and the purpose of the space being developed by the Streetscape Phase 3 project located at the intersection of the Cleveland Street and Gulf to Bay Boulevard in the East Gateway downtown area. Since 2011, the city has intended to have a Hispanic community core there. The idea is to have a Mercado, a public market space inside the larger festival core. A preliminary plan was developed and approved by the CRA trustees in 2017. In late 2017, the streetscape project was paused until underground utility construction plans were developed, nothing to do with the approved Mercado design. Then in March of 2020, the CRA and city staff presented a new conceptual design for the Mercado. Though the design had significantly less features, the CRA trustees approved the concept and instructed the CRA and city staff to produce a plan that reflected the Hispanic heritage of the neighborhood. Signage for the Mercado is even installed downtown. I kept asking the city streetscape project manager, Ms. Cochran, for the finalized Mercado design, and in May of 2022, she responded that the plan was infeasible. Her plan was to pour concrete and design the space later. I did not like this plan and solicited the local community with the idea to have grass installed until a feasible community plan could be developed. I received overwhelming support. At the May CRA meeting, when I asked the trustees to not pour concrete, but to install grass and develop a community-driven plan when the space actually existed, they agreed, thankfully. During the July CRA meeting, the trustees discussed the project again. The interim director, Mr. Jennings, and trustee, Ms. Texeria, said that they talked to leaders in the Eastgate Community Group, a very small group with few members, about the design and purpose. No other entity was mentioned. Then at the August Cleveland Streetscape Quarterly Update meeting, Ms. Cochran, as project manager, presented a new design to a small group of attendees. I watched the video of her presentation and no mention of the Hispanic community was spoken. This design refers to the space as the festival core with the purpose of a gathering space. The space has been renamed and a new purpose, which is not a Hispanic community center. I do not support this plan or any group or person that would marginalize the existing Hispanic community. I apologize if I facilitated doing that in any way. They have supported my business for the past 15 years and I want to support them. So now I'm asking that the space's purpose be kept to be a Mercado, a place to serve as a Hispanic community civic core, and then an actual community-driven plan be developed by persons that respect the Hispanic community and the purpose of the space. Thank you for the consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Flaherty. Mr. Jennings, we haven't taken any action to change the name from Mercado, have we?
No, we have not.
And we have no intention of doing so, do we?
Well, as I had said in an email just yesterday, I have always referred to it as the Mercado. I attended a meeting some months ago where I was corrected because I've referred to it as the Mercado ever since I've been here. I was corrected that it should be called the Festival Core, but there's been no official action by the city, by staff, or anything. So we consider it to be called the Mercado. So that's and the signage is up. You know, the wayfinding signage. So we believe that it's the Mercado, unless the council wants to change it, which I don't believe you do.
I don't think there's any desire. I haven't heard anything. Is that correct? Okay. Anyone else for citizens to be heard?
Norm Bill, the Veterans Advocate, way past 3 minutes. I understand I will comply. I have to kind of apologize. I travel a lot on different items, and coming to 3 minutes and talk about some of these really doesn't do some of the people justice, but it's better than nothing. I was out of town in St. Louis, and we did a ceremony with St. Louis Post-Dispatch for Medal of Honor winner, Sergeant Major Quick, 100 years to the day that he died. And the newspaper article is syndicated, so it'll probably trickle down to this region, and it talks about how he and his efforts are relevant to Americans today and the response to 9/11. This one in particular, I know people probably can't see it, but if anybody saw it, they're not really related to the military, they would recognize it, a Pulitzer Prize winner. 72 years to this day, Lieutenant Baldomero Lopez from Tampa was killed in action when he crossed the seawall and he smothered a hand grenade to save his platoon. We also know today is the start of Hispanic Month. And so originally there was going to be, this is just a prototype. I have a real good frame, computerized picture framed that was supposed to be presented to Mayor Castor in Tampa. And Councilman Louis Vieira and Commissioner Mariella Smith, and especially my good friend Judge Salsinas, all worked together, and it didn't happen. The position is we're only going to recognize Baldy every 5 years. Well, and we did 2 years ago, so 3 years from now, I might even be dead. So in the meantime, we'll be putting these pictures up anywhere anybody wants them. So if Clearwater and the mayor wants one before Tampa gets one, that's fine with me. And I'd be remiss, Judge Salsinas is only one of 71 honorary Marines ever selected by the Commandant of the Marine Corps. He's up there with Gary Sinise and Bugs Bunny, believe it or not. So, other than that, the change of command was SOCOM. We talked about the Constitution. We talk about these meetings. We talk about us meeting places like that. There are victories for our Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and even laws like posse comitatus, where we can get together en masse, civilians and military, with a lot of high-value targets that have literally been targeted by our enemies, including Quds, who's declared Central Command and its affiliates, which I guess includes me, as terrorist and terrorist organization to be eliminated. But everything went well. We had Chief Slaughter, Clearwater's finest, representing him, and it was a good ceremony, no issues, nobody clowning around, and that in itself is a victory. Just as we hold these meetings together, we are upholding a constitution of what our forefathers brought to us. So, other than that, I'll just have to wait for another 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Bill.
Oh, that person's coming.
Don't forget him.
Oh.
And we'd be honored to have the picture, and we'd like to beat Tampa to the punch. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Mr. Jennings, and City Attorney. I've had the opportunity to meet John Jennings when he first became city manager. Several gentlemen and myself spoke with him about an alternative way that the city of Clearwater could manage the Clearwater Air Park. That alternative is very simple.
That's going to be item 11.4.
Oh, sorry, I'm speaking against 11.4.
But if you could wait till that item comes up to speak on. This is a time for people to speak to items that are not on the agenda.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry.
No problem. Anyone else for citizens to be heard?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Juan. Mayor, thank you for the opportunity. Councils, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to listen to the citizens and keep the Mercado. It's very important. We like the diversity. We like to enjoy what we have, and we like to share with everybody. So I'm very thankful. I'm representing the Florida Federations of Hidalguenses. So it's a big group, a number of people that we live here for decades, and I'm very happy. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming out tonight.
Good evening, my name is Lisa Lanza, and I want to hope you feel.
Go ahead, Ms. Alonso. Don't mind me.
Let's see, I wanted to speak about the increase in the utility fee. I just want people to realize it's that water bill that comes to your house every day. I'm talking mostly single family because I live in a single family home. I don't know what's going on with the condo rates, but anyway, it's 3%
for the next 5 years. So it's 3% and then 3% on that total, 3% on that total. So it's accumulative over the next 5 years. Also, that's the, okay, that, and then the stormwater fee is only 1.6, which is cumulative over the next 5 years. I think, to my knowledge, $16 million was taken out of the utility fund for the building of the city hall. And if we're not gonna end up building the city hall, I don't know what the vote's gonna be, but if we end up just using the city hall, making the library the city hall, I would like to see that $16 million that was taken out of the utility fund come back. And I don't think that's the way to budget, you know, to just pull money out of a utility fund. That's our money that we put in there basically for utilities, not for building a city hall. Let's see, was there another item? Well, that's it for now. Thank you for your service.
Now I only have half a lung. Okay. Anyone else for citizens to be heard? Okay, I'm going to close citizens to be heard. I'd ask if there are any items on the consent agenda, items 7.1 through 7.21. Anyone to remove an item from the public or the council? Seeing none, do I have a motion? Thank you.
I move that we do that.
7.1
Oh, yes.
Through
I move to approve item 7.1.
through
Through 7.21.
7.21.
I second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. 8.1.
Set the final millage rate of 5.8850 mils for fiscal year 2022-23 against non-exempt real and personal property within the city of Clearwater. Pass ordinance 9614-22 on first reading.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Kayleen Castle, Budget Officer. This is the first of two public hearings required by Florida statute to finalize the fiscal year 22-23 operating and capital improvement budget. For the benefit of residents present or watching, I have a presentation which gives an overview of the budget you're approving today. The fiscal year 22-23 proposed budget for all city operating funds, the special revenue funds, and the capital improvement funds is $651,115,095. This reflects a 4% increase from the 21-22 amended total city budget. This slide is a breakdown of that $650 million by fund type. The general fund budget for fiscal year 23 reflects a 3% increase from the current year's amended budget. For fiscal year 23, the general fund budget includes increases estimated for wage study adjustments, new FTEs that are proposed, partial year operating expenses for Imagine Clearwater Coachman Park operations, and debt service costs for Imagine bonds. The utility funds total, which includes the budget for water and sewer, stormwater, gas, and solid waste and recycling operations, reflects a 6% decrease from the fiscal year 22 amended budget. This decrease is primarily due to decreased funding for capital projects in the water and sewer fund. The enterprise funds total, which includes the budget for the operations of the beach marina, air park, Clearwater Harbor Marina, and parking, is budgeted at a 67% increase over the amended fiscal year 22 budget. This increase is driven by personnel costs in all funds, increases in the parking fund for interfund chargebacks, which will support the addition of new officers added that are assigned to the beach, and the transfer of $10,500,000 for the downtown parking garage project. The internal service funds include the budget for information technology, utility customer service, building and maintenance, fleet and radio communications, and the central insurance fund. The budget for internal service funds reflect a 9% increase from the current year's amended budget, which is due to increased insurance expenses in the central insurance fund, increased fuel and debt costs in the fleet fund, and increased salaries and contract expenses in IT. Special revenue funds include the Special Development Fund, which accounts for restricted revenue sources that are allocated to capital projects. The Special Program Fund, which is used to account for both revenues and expenditures related to grants and special activities, and our other housing assistance funds. Special revenue funds reflect a 33% increase in comparison to the current year's amended budget due to increased penny funding and capital projects for the upcoming year. And the Capital Improvement Fund reflects a 4% increase from the fiscal year 22 amended budget. This chart represents the change in taxable property values over the last 11 years. Our 2022 certified values received from the Pinellas County Property Appraiser on July 1st reflect an increase in property values of approximately 13.2% from $13.4 billion in 2021 to $15.2 billion. A millage rate of 5.8850 mils is recommended for the fiscal year 22-23 budget. This is a decrease of 0.07 from the current rate of 5.955 mils. Due to the value growth, this proposed rate is 9.93% greater than the rolled back rate. The rolled back rate is the millage rate that would provide the city with the same property tax revenue as was received in the prior year. Using the proposed millage rate, property tax revenues are projected to be $85 million in fiscal year 23. This represents an increase of approximately $8.3 million or 11% over their fiscal year 22 budget. Of this $85 million projected, approximately $81 million will support general fund operations and $4 million represents the road millage used for maintenance of city streets. Revenues that support general fund operations reflect a net increase of 3% in comparison to the fiscal year 2022 mid-year amended revenues. As discussed in the previous slide, ad valorem tax revenues are budgeted at approximately $81 million, which is an 11% increase over the current year. This is our largest revenue source at 44% of total general fund revenues. Intergovernmental revenues are projected to increase by 18%. The largest revenue source in this category is sales tax, which have rebounded from COVID and have shown steady growth in the prior and current year. This fiscal year 23 budget is based upon these current year trends. Charges for service revenues are budgeted at 9% greater than the current year's budget. This is driven by increases in administrative charges, the increased direct charge to parking to cover the costs, a portion of the cost of the new police officers to support the beach. Transfer in revenues are increasing by 9%. This recognizes increased revenues for administration of housing funds and revenues to reimburse the cost of outside counsel that are now budgeted in legal. Other revenue categories include building permit fees, fines, interest earnings, and various small miscellaneous revenues. This category is anticipated to increase by 20% in comparison to fiscal year 22 amended revenues, and this is primarily due to building permits and beach rentals. General fund expenditures reflect an increase of 3% across all operations in comparison to the current year's amended budget. The 7% increase in the police budget is related to new FTEs, salary and benefit increases, and increases in internal charges related to radio replacements and new vehicles and fleet charges. In the fire department, this 8% increase is related to salary and benefit increases and increases in internal charges for technology and fleet costs and increased capital transfers. The budget for Parks and Recreation reflects the transfer of 22 positions to the new Public Works Department, as well as the addition of 18.8 new FTEs to support the operations of Imagine Clearwater Coachman Park. The 12% increase in the library is due to increased capital transfers for the main library renovations. For Public Works, the prior year budget total represents the current engineering department. For fiscal year 23, this 52% increase is related to the transfers of streets and sidewalks, urban forestry, and the contracts team from Parks and Recreation, as well as the addition of new FTEs for the department director and the new right-of-way maintenance team. The budget for non-departmental includes the cost for minor general expenses, property and liability insurance, a transfer to the CRA for the city's share of ad valorem taxes, and transfers to the capital fund for ongoing maintenance projects at general government facilities. For fiscal year 23, this 45% decrease is due to large transfers to capital projects in the current year's amended budget. All other departments, as shown on this slide, include administrative departments, which includes the new Office of Innovation. The 14% increase is primarily related to new FTEs as well as changes with salaries and benefits. This chart represents the total general fund budget by category. Personnel costs continue to be our largest expense at 60.5% of total. This is down from 63% total in the current year due to growth in other categories. Operating expenditures represent the next largest category at approximately 16% of total budget. Internal service charges, which account for the costs associated with information technology, building and maintenance, fleet, risk management, and employee benefits, represent 12% of the total general fund budget. The total for interfund transfers represents 10% of total. And debt and capital expenditures combined represent approximately 1.5% of the total general fund budget. A total of 1,876 full-time equivalent positions are proposed across all funds for fiscal year 23. This is an increase of 27.3 from the fiscal year 22 amended budget. In this graph, the sand-colored portion represents general fund FTEs, which are budgeted at 1,151.9 positions for fiscal year 23. This is an increase of 38 positions from the current year's amended budget. In comparison, the green portion represents all other funds, which are budgeted at 724.1 FTEs for fiscal year 23. This is a decrease of 10.7 from the current year. These next two slides list FTE changes included in this proposed budget by category. The first category, accountability, includes a total of 8 positions that are being added to enhance financial, operational, or managerial accountability. For the general fund, this includes an auditor for internal audit, a payroll technician for the fire department, and in planning and development, a development review planner and a building plans examiner. In the administrative services fund, a network analyst, senior systems programmer, and senior business systems analyst are added to IT, and an assistant manager is added for additional field supervision at the marina, at the beach marina. The operational efficiency category represents new initiatives or department reorganizations requested by the city manager. A total of 15 FTEs are being requested in the general fund. The Office of Innovation Department is being created with the addition of a Chief Innovation Officer, a Sustainability Specialist, and 2 neighborhood coordinators, which will accompany 2.7 existing positions transferred from the city manager's office. A new Public Works Department is established with the addition of a Public Works Director and 6 positions to create a right-of-way maintenance team. This new staff, along with 50 positions from engineering and 22 positions from Parks and Recreation, will operate the general fund portions of Public Works. A Human Resources Manager and Human Resources Analyst are being added to HR to enhance citywide training programs. In the clerk's office, we're adding a grant coordinator. And in Economic and Development, a senior real estate coordinator is added to assist with the coordination and management of real estate transactions. In support of new capital investments completed in the next year, 18.8 positions are added in Parks and Recreation to create programming and provide for maintenance and beautification of the downtown core, which represents Imagine Clearwater through the Cleveland Streetscape to Crest Lake Park. And finally, our last category represents additional staff proposed in relation to new or enhanced levels of service. In the general fund, a total of 11.2 positions are added to the police department, which includes 10 police officers to support increased service demands related to development and tourism on Clearwater Beach, and an increase of 1.2 FTEs for variable police aid hours to provide additional staffing at the causeway on holidays and peak periods. Level of service increases for other operating funds total 3.3 FTEs. This includes the addition of a marina parking supervisor who will supervise staff at both marinas and the air park, an additional parking facility aide at the beach marina, and the increase of half of an FTE to upgrade an existing part-time marine facility operator to staff peak operating hours at the fuel dock. In the parking fund, an increase of 0.2 of a parking attendant is added, and this portion of a position is added to an existing part-time position to upgrade it to full-time. And in Parks and Recreation, the addition of a part-time 0.6 of an FTE recreation leader to support summer and after-school programs, and this position will be funded by the Juvenile Welfare Board. These new requests total 56.3 FTEs, 49 in the general fund and 7.3 positions to support other operating funds. In an effort to identify opportunities for right-sizing the organization and looking for solutions to be conservative about this growth, we've identified 29 positions that are being eliminated this year due to the inability to staff for more than 1 year. The total on this line also includes positions that are being moved between operating funds. This reduction and reclass of positions results in a net increase of 27.3 FTEs citywide being proposed for fiscal year 23. This slide represents the categorical breakdown of the capital improvement budget for fiscal year 23. Funding for projects for utilities, which include stormwater, water and sewer, gas, and solid waste and recycling, are budgeted at $55.8 million. This continues to be our largest expense at approximately 44% of the total capital improvement budget. General government projects are estimated at $32.2 million, which represents 26% of total. This includes projects for police, fire, streets, sidewalks, parks and recreation facilities, libraries, and maintenance of city buildings and facilities that operate general government functions. Significant changes proposed to general government projects include additional funding of $700,000 of general fund revenues in the streets and sidewalks project, additional penny funding of $2 million and a $1 million increase of general fund revenues to fund Long Center renovations, and $575,000 for main library renovations. Projects in support of internal service operations are budgeted at $12.7 million or 10% of total capital funding. These projects support fleet, radio communications, general services, information technology, and utility customer service. Significant changes to funding and internal service projects include an increase of approximately $5 million in garage purchase and replacements due to increased prices and the addition of vehicles and equipment added in support of new FTEs, facilities, and programs. And the capital budget for small enterprise funds is proposed at $24.6 million for fiscal year 23. This provides funding for capital repair and maintenance of the air park, both marinas, and parking facilities. Significant changes to enterprise fund projects in comparison to the current year include penny funding of $11.5 million for the beach marina upgrade project and $10.5 million for the downtown parking garage. Circling back to property values and millage rates, I want to take a moment to talk about how this millage rate affects our residents here in Clearwater with an example of city taxes on homesteaded property. As a reminder, the taxable value is the value after all exemptions. With homestead exemption, Save Our Homes cap limits the increase in assessed value to the lesser of CPI or 3%. The Save Our Homes cap for this year is that maximum of 3%. With this cap, the assessed values of homesteaded properties cannot increase above 3%. On a home with a 2021 taxable value of $100,000, the value growth for tax purposes would be an increase of $3,000 for a new taxable value of $103,000. In this example, city taxes would increase by $10.66. Trim notices were mailed to residents in August. These notices show an estimate of total property taxes for the year based upon all agencies' proposed millage rates. This slide represents the breakdown of that total bill for Clearwater residents. Approximately 31% of your tax bill is for the Pinellas County School Board, 30% is in support of Pinellas County government operations, the city's portion is 30% of that total, and 9% of total is collected to support other taxing agencies. Tonight is our first public hearing, and the second hearing to adopt the budget will be at a special meeting held on Thursday, September 29th, beginning at 6 p.m. This budget will go into effect on October 1st, 2022. So this specific item is for the first reading of the millage ordinance to adopt a rate of 5.885 mils to support the operating and capital improvement budgets for fiscal year 2023. This rate is a 0.07 reduction from the current year's rate of 5.9550 mils. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions for Ms. Castle from the dais? Anyone from the public to speak to this item? I wish we were lowering the millage rate even further. I know there's not support for that, but I did find it interesting. The Times did publish an article, I think it was this past Sunday, comparing people who've lived here for a short time versus those who have lived here for a longer period of time, and the differential in what they're paying in taxes, same houses, and same levels of service. It's just, was good to see, because I think it's something people need to understand. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve, agenda
Mr.
item 8.1.
That's fine.
Sorry.
Second.
Mr. Margolis?
We have ordinance number 9614-22, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, declaring a millage rate to be levied for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2022, and ending September 30th, 2023, for operating purposes, including the funding of pensions, debt service, and road maintenance for capital improvement expenditures at 5.8850 mils, providing an effective date. The levy of 5.8850 mils constitutes a 9.93% increase from the rolled back rate of 5.3535 mils. Mayor, with your permission, I'd like to go ahead and read the next one, which
David, doesn't it need to be read in village? It needs to be read in full.
Yeah, for millage, we'll go ahead and do that. Whereas the estimated revenue to be received by the city for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2022, and ending September 30th, 2023, from ad valorem taxes is $85,015,120, and whereas, based upon the taxable value provided by the Pinellas County property appraiser, 5.8850 mils are necessary to generate $85,015,120. Now therefore be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Clearwater, Florida, Section 1, it is hereby determined that a tax of 5.8850 mils against the non-exempt real and personal property within the city is necessary to raise the sums to be appropriated for operation purposes, including pensions, debt service, and road capital improvement projects for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2022. Section 2, the levy of 5.8850 mils constitutes a 9.93% increase from the rollback rate. Section 3, the ordinance shall take effect October 1st, 2022.
Should we do the motion?
I can go ahead and read
Yes.
the budget ordinance.
No,
that's
we're
the
just,
next
that's
item.
the next item. Mayor, citizen would like to speak to the item before we close the vote. She
Okay.
did not understand she had the opportunity, that the floor was open. So yeah.
Lisa Lanza, so I hope other people will speak to this, because it's very important. This is our budget, multi-millions of dollars. I would like to say, because I know you keep bringing up about those of us who've lived here a long time and our taxes are less than other people. Well, those of us who've lived here a long time, many of us were in public service. I, for example, worked for the state of Florida, and I was also a school teacher. So my pension, I mean, I'm not complaining, but I made a conscious decision in 1985, I think it was. I'll just stay in my house. I'll continue as a public servant. I'm going to have a low income, I know that. I'll do the best I can to save for my old age, which I'm in right now. And so you can't compare us to the people who've come here from New York, and not to mention the New, but other states like New York, California, where their income is much higher. They're coming here with higher Social Security checks. This is an old story. You've heard this a million times. We've been through this, we've had this conversation for the last 50 years that I've lived here. But we are on a different economy. You've got two economies in Clearwater. You've got the economy of those people who worked here our whole lives, bought our houses. Yes, they weren't expensive when they bought them, but at the same time, our interest rates in 1976 were almost mine was 8.5%, and they went up progressively each street. I remember by the last street, the interest rate was up to 11%. So you cannot compare us to the people that have moved down here with money from up north, pensions, savings, and they buy a bigger, a big house. I mean, they know what they're getting into. But we can't compete with that. That is why many people end up leaving, because they say, I just can't can't afford to stay in Clearwater anymore. That's why they passed Save Our Homes. I remember when it was passed for little old ladies like me. That's what it was passed for. That's what they told us. And it's allowed me to stay in my home. I could pay my bills, I could pay my taxes, and I could live comfortably. I'm not living high on the hog or anything, but I can live comfortably. It saved my home. So please, don't compare us to those other people that, that you interact with at the Bel Air Country Club, because we aren't at the Bel Air Country Club. We don't even get, well, I won't, thank you very much.
Ms. Lanza? No, you're done, but I'm not talking about high-priced real estate. I'm talking about houses in every neighborhood in Clearwater. You can live next door to somebody, and I am a recipient of this. I've lived in my house for 24 years. Ms. Lanza, your 3 minutes is done.
Well, that's not fair, okay?
Well,
I understand
Ms.
how
Lanza?
everything goes, and we all do, so you're talking down.
You're out of order. Clearly.
You're talking down to us. We understand how it works.
I think it is still important that people understand it is a benefit, it's legal, but you can live next door to a neighbor who is new, and they could be paying 4 or 5 times as much. And Mr. Slaughter is going to be there in the same amount of time, and you get the same libraries and the same rec centers, and I just think that ought to be understood. We have to represent everybody, the people who are new and the people who are old, as far as living here. Ms. Lanza, I will have you removed. Item 8.2.
We still need a vote. We need a motion.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. 8.2.
Mayor, do you want me to go ahead and do the reading line?
Approve the City of Clearwater
needs to
annual
read the
operating
title.
budget for the 2022-2023 fiscal year and pass ordinance 9615-22 on first reading.
Ordinance number 9615-22, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, adopting an operating budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2022, and ending September 30th, 2023, authorizing the city manager to issue such instructions that are necessary to achieve and accomplish the service program so authorized, authorizing the city manager to transfer monies and programs among the departments and activities within any fund as provided by Chapter 2 of the Clearwater Code of Ordinances, providing an effective date.
This is
Ms.
the first reading of the ordinance for the operating budget for fiscal year 22-23. I went over I went over in detail the changes from preliminary to this final proposal for adoption with you on Monday. I'd be happy to answer any additional questions you have.
Any questions for Ms. Castle? Vice Mayor.
Well, it's not exactly a question, but it's a comment, and I'd like some guidance from us. So on the work session on Monday, I had asked about the interest accrued from the $22.4 million in ARPA funds that we've had in our accounts for over a year and a half. And so that amount, we were informed through the week that amount is $161,286.41 as of September 30th. And I would like to make a motion to assign the amount of ARPA fund interest accrued so far through 9/30/22, that $161,286.41, and all additional interest earned to an account bucket, we've been calling them buckets, called ARPA interest. And ultimately, I believe this is where those funds should go. This interest was earned because we have not spent those ARPA funds in the year and a half plus that we've had them. So we need to keep this money attached to the federal funds that were allocated to us. They were not local taxpayer funds. They are not property tax funds. So we need to maximize the purposes for which these funds were allocated. So those 161,000 plus funds can go to ARPA compliant projects. And when we start getting grant requests from members of our community, every little bit will help. I've talked to a number of people this week, Ms. Jay Hinson with Arts for Life. I've talked to the people that work with the Going Home Coalition. We had a meeting this week about funds that are used to send people who are struggling with homelessness back to families that might be in different parts of the country, and they have a good success rate. So anyway, there are lots of programs out there that can use, any bit of that 161,000 plus as our interest accrues. So I just think it's real prudent to keep that money there. And I know that there was a question brought up about the parameters on ARPA funds and what we can spend them on, and those parameters are incredibly broad, very broad. I wouldn't use that as an excuse not to put them in an ARPA interest fund, ARPA fund interest bucket. So that's my motion, to assign those ARPA interest accrued money, and as well as any additional interest accrued from ARPA funds back into an account called ARPA interest.
Yes.
I would like to have an opportunity to speak to staff to see the logistics of that and what are the implications, if any, before I'm comfortable voting on that.
Well, do I have a second?
Not yet.
Second. For discussion?
Well, can the finance, department comment right now about the feasibility of that?
We have the latitude to do whatever we want.
Right.
It's not a matter of that.
Correct. And for budget purposes on like this ordinance, it really doesn't change anything. We budget an estimate of revenues based on, the money that is in the bank, and it would be in those budgeted in those specific funds, and then we would just move it to a project, and we would do that at an amendment next year. So
Vice Mayor, I just don't think this is the appropriate time to bring that up. If we want to have an agenda item to discuss it at the next council meeting, I think that's the appropriate time to talk about it, not with this budget item.
Well, as long as I have assurances, I think as long as, I can understand that as interest is accruing, it is staying with those ARPA funds. Is that correct? It's not moving into general funds. What bucket is it in?
The majority, so so far it's been in the special program fund, which the revenues stay in the special program fund. And it stays like at fund level, except where we are required to put it, like there are certain grants that we apply the interest to. So right now it stays in that fund, and we can amend it next year. We can, it would be prior year at that point, but we can still make those moves as part of the amendment process next year to move it from fund balance to a specific project. So upon, your future direction, it wouldn't change what you're adopting today. That would be absolutely like an amendment next year.
Mr. Jennings, thoughts?
Yes, we certainly can bring an agenda item. So when she references next year, it's October 1 begins.
Next meeting.
2 weeks.
So what we can do at the next meeting is, as the mayor suggested, is bring an agenda item that would move the ARPA interest into one of the buckets.
However, we would need to wait on the amendment till the first quarter. So we can have a conversation and have an ordinance and pass all of it, but it wouldn't reflect in the budget until first quarter, where you would then pass the first quarter budget amendment. So
You're right. Like normal, tonight's third quarter, where we reference things that you previously approved. So upon your direction, I would formalize it at first quarter.
Okay.
If there's support.
Right, if there's support. Okay. Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it.
Will you withdraw the
I withdraw
motion?
I withdraw the motion.
Okay. Anyone to speak to item 8.2 from the public for 3 minutes?
Good evening, each of you. Javante Scott, resident of Clearwater. I'm here tonight not as a resident or citizen, but as a student, studying public policy administration, St. Petersburg College under Professor Kronschnabel, your friend and colleague, former colleague, sent tonight to show my support for this item. The budget that was previously presented a couple weeks ago, as well as the budget tonight, recommended by the city manager and the staff. I said thank you to Ms. Castle for the few moments she shared with me before this meeting, and thank you to each of you tonight for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Anyone else? Do I have a motion to approve item 8.2?
I move to approve agenda item 8.2.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Whoever set up the lifesavers, I don't know who it was in the audience, but thank you. They were much better than the halls. I finished them, so we'll see what happens next. 8.3.
Approve the fiscal year 2022-2023 annual capital improvement budget, establish a 6-year plan for the capital improvement program, and pass ordinance 9616-22 on first reading.
This is for the first reading of the ordinance to adopt the capital improvement budget for fiscal year 22-23. On Monday, I went over in detail with you the changes from the preliminary release of the budget to this ordinance that you're reading tonight.
Any questions for Ms. Castle? Anyone from the public to speak to item 8.3? Mr. Margolis?
Ordinance number 9616-22, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, adopting a capital improvement program budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2022, and ending September 30th, 2023, approving the 6-year capital improvement program, which shall be reevaluated at the beginning of each fiscal year, authorizing the city manager to issue such instructions that are necessary to achieve and accomplish the capital improvements so authorized, authorizing the city manager to transfer money between projects in the capital improvement program, appropriating available and anticipated resources for the projects identified, providing an effective date.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve agenda item 8.3.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. 8.4.
Approve the recommended penny for Pinellas project list and revised for fiscal year 2022-23 through 2029 and 30.
This is the annual public hearing to approve the Penny for Pinellas project list for fiscal year 22-23 through fiscal year 29-30. City ordinance requires us to hold a public hearing prior to the adoption of the capital improvement budget to discuss the use of Penny for Pinellas tax and at any time in which there is a proposed change to the project list of $500,000 or more. Changes to the project list includes increases to project funding and the addition of several new projects, all of which were included in the proposed capital improvement budget for fiscal year 23. Total project funding reflects a net increase of $18,972,430, which include the following changes. An increase of $372,430 to the fire engine's ladder truck replacement project. These changes are recommended to revise the budget to align with current engine prices and future cost escalations. The sports fields and facilities project is reduced by $3,350,000 to provide for the following sub-projects. The Frank Tack Improvements project is budgeted at $550,000, funded in fiscal years 23-24 and 24-25. And the Mcmullen Tennis Building Renovations project, which is budgeted at $2,800,000, funded in fiscal years 27-28 and 28-29. The Neighborhood and Community Parks Renovations and Facilities project is reduced by $1,200,000. This is to provide a portion of the funding needed for the Woodgate Park renovations project, budgeted at $1,800,000, funded in fiscal year 26-27. The Long Center Renovations project is added to this list to provide additional funding needed for the facilities renovation, specifically the renovation of the natatorium. A total penny contribution of $5 million is budgeted across fiscal year 22-23 and 23-24. The Beach Marina Upgrades project is increased by $8 million for a new total of $23 million budgeted in fiscal years 22-23 and 23-24. And the Clearwater Harbor Marina Replacement Upgrade project is added to this list to provide additional funding needed for future wave attenuator replacements. A total penny contribution of $5 million is budgeted over fiscal years 25-26 through 29-30. I'd be happy to answer any additional questions you have.
Any questions for Ms. Castle? Anyone from the public to speak to item 8.4? Seeing none, I have a motion.
Move to approve item 8.4.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. 8.5.
Approve a future land use map amendment from the residential urban RU category to the institutional I category for portions of property located at 110 North McMullen Booth Road and pass ordinance 9594-22 on first reading.
Good evening, Gina Clayton, Planning and Development. The request before you is to amend the future land use designation of two areas, approximately .89 acres, from the residential urban plan category to the institutional category. These areas are part of a larger 41-acre site owned and occupied by the the Calvary Baptist Church. The purpose of this plan amendment is to enable the church to incorporate this land into their campus. The northern parcel will be used as part of a parking lot, and the one on the south will be used for stormwater retention. The surrounding area is characterized by mostly institutional uses. School athletic fields and office uses are located to the west, the churches to the north, Mcmullen Booth to the east, and there are some remaining single-family homes in the area as well. The surrounding future land use categories include institutional and residential urban. As outlined in the staff report, the proposed plan category is consistent with the surrounding area. It will not degrade the level of city services and meets the standards for comprehensive plan amendments set forth in the Community Development Code. The CDB reviewed this at their August meeting and unanimously recommends approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Clayton? Anyone from the public to speak to item 8.5? I have been a member of Calvary for 43 years, but there is no reason for me to recuse myself, correct? Mr. Margolis, there is no financial gain?
I assume that you have no financial gain in this.
I do not. So just wanted to put that on the record. Do I have a motion?
Yes, move to approve agenda item 8.5.
Second.
All in favor?
Mayor, we have for 8.5.
Yes.
It's ordinance number 9594-22, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, amending the future land use element of the comprehensive plan of the city to change the land use designation for a portion of certain real property located generally on the southwest corner of Drew Street and McMullen Booth Road, whose post office address is 110 North McMullen Booth Road, Clearwater, Florida 33759, from residential urban RU to institutional I, providing an effective date.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. 9.1.
Approve a zoning atlas amendment from the low-medium density residential district to the institutional I district for portions of property located at 110 North McMullen Booth Road and pass ordinance 9595-22 on first reading.
This is the companion zoning atlas amendment to the item that you just heard. The subject properties are currently zoned low, medium density residential, and the request is to rezone them to the institutional district so they can be incorporated into the campus. The proposed institutional district is in character with the overall zoning atlas designations in the area and is consistent with the surrounding uses. The institutional zoning is located to the north, south, and west, and there's county single-family zoning districts to the east and south, and I believe there's one remaining Clearwater property. As detailed in the staff report, the proposed amendment will not degrade the existing level of service for public facilities or conflict with any goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive plan. The CDB recommended approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Clayton? Anyone from the public to speak to item 9.1? Seeing none, Mr. Margolis.
Ordinance number 9595-22, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, amending the zoning atlas of the city by rezoning a portion of certain real property located generally on the southwest corner of Drew Street and McMullen Booth Road, whose post office address is 110 North McMullen Booth Road, Clearwater, Florida 33759, from low medium density residential LMDR to institutional I, providing an effective date.
Do I have a motion?
I move to approve agenda item 9.1.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. 10.1.
This is ordinance number 9610-22, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, vacating the platted drainage easement, stormwater pond, to City of Clearwater, the platted 10-foot wide and 20-foot wide drainage easement, and a portion of the 10-foot wide platted utility easement up to the south property line located on Lot 1, Ken Marks Ford First, add, according to the map or plat thereof, as recorded in Plat Book 105, page 100, of the Public Records of Pinellas County, Florida, providing an effective date.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve agenda item 10.1.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. 11.1.
Amend the city's fiscal year 2021-22 operating and capital improvement budgets at third quarter and pass ordinances 9617-22 and 9618-22 on first reading.
Good evening again. This is the third quarter and final budget review for fiscal year 21-22. I went over the report in detail with you on Monday. I'd be happy to answer any additional questions that you have.
Any questions for Ms. Castle? Anyone from the public to speak to item 11.1? Mr. Margolis.
We have two ordinances, the first of which is ordinance number 9617-22, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, amending the operating budget for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2022, to reflect increases and decreases in revenues and expenditures for the General Fund, Special Development Fund, Special Program Fund, Marine Fund, and Parking Fund, as provided herein, providing an effective date. Next up is ordinance number 9618-22, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, amending the capital improvement budget for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2022, to reflect an increase of $14,055,937, providing an effective date.
Do I have a motion?
Move to approve item 11.1.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. 11.2.
Award construction contracts to the following contractors: Engineered Spray Solutions of Lakeland, Florida, Inliner Solutions of Sanford, Florida, Roland Inc. of Pinellas Park, Florida, and USSI LLC of Venice, Florida, for the 2023 sewer point repairs and improvements in the amount of $32 million for an initial one-year term on a unit price basis pursuant to invitation to bid 22-0006 UT, and authorized appropriate officials to execute same.
Good evening. Good evening, Council. My name is Jeremy Brown. I'm an engineering manager. This item's $32 million, and so we thought we'd prepare a presentation to help you and the public understand why we need it, and to help provide you some more information about it, basically. We refer to it as the 2023 Sewer Point Repairs Project. There are 6 different components to it. Tonight we're going to go over a little bit about an overview. We'll talk a little bit about the background, briefly mention a master plan and its recommendations. We'll discuss a little program overview, and then a quick summary and some questions if you have any. So the Public Utilities Department, they own and operate our utility systems. And what does that mean? Well, there's 44 supply wells. The water then goes to one of 3 treatment plants. It is then distributed to our residents and customers. From there, it becomes wastewater, and it goes into our collection system, and that's going to be the focus of tonight's discussion. Afterwards, it is conveyed to one of our 3 water reclamation facilities, and then after that, we distribute reclaimed water to our customers. So here's a little more detail about the wastewater collection system. As you can see, it's pretty extensive. There's a lot of components to it. And so what we did was we did a master plan to help us try to identify, how do we stay on top of all this infrastructure, right? And so that's this right here, and then the results of it are here. And this is just renewal and replacement. I want to emphasize that. This isn't capacity upgrades. This isn't new pipes. This isn't new designs. This is merely replacing what's already there, rehabilitating it. I want to highlight, by 2030, the consultants were recommending about $160 million worth of work. It's a lot of work, right? There's 327 by 2050, and so, we're tasked with trying to accomplish that. And so here's a little further breakdown to the different components within the collection system itself. Obviously, you can see there's about $100 million is the focus of the recommendations, and those are associated with our gravity mains. So again, how do we get all this work done? Well, what we did is we came up with what we think is an innovative approach to it, and we developed a program. And so a little over a year ago, we hired a consultant, and you can see them up top in the blue bubble. It's a pretty large contract, but what they are there for is to help us scale up. And so you've heard us talk about resources and lack of project managers over in the past. Well, we didn't have the components to really get all that work done that is being recommended. So we hired the contractor, and the focus today is going to be on just these items right here. And so now that we have a consultant on board, we can scale up. I guess I'll add, we have a project right now that has these same components. We've had it for about 4 years, but we haven't been able to get a lot of work done because we don't have the project managers and we don't have the inspectors to make sure that the work's being done properly. Now we do. So now we have a consultant, they can scale up with us, and that's why the increase in budget that we're asking you to approve today. So I'll briefly go through each one of these groups so you and the public can have a better understanding as to what they are. This is Group A. It's a cured in place pipe. We basically put a structural liner inside of an existing pipe. You can see on the right there, roots and vegetation can get into a lot of our clay pipes, and it can crack them. And so this is a good way of rehabilitating the pipe without actually excavating. The next one here is sewer cleaning and televising inspections. And as you can see, there's a blockage on the left, and then there's a camera, and they're cleaning it out, and they're in the middle of cleaning it out right now. Group C is our emergency and non-emergency improvements. As you can see, this is some of our pipe. This is one of our breaks that we had to manage. And so what this contract allows us to do is we have a contractor that can mobilize and make repairs on a 24 hours as needed basis. There's a Group D, cleanouts and lateral installation, where we install new laterals for service connections and replace existing lines that have defects. There's a Group E, this is manhole surfacing, where the contractor applies a coating to the inside of a manhole to extend its longevity and also prevent groundwater from leaking into the manhole. These old brick manholes, the mortar there wears out over time, and the water can kind of seep in through it. And then finally, Group F, smoke and dye testing. This is where we introduce smoke into a manhole, and then we have inspectors roam the surface looking for defects that are identified by visual observations of smoke coming up from the ground. So in summary, 6 individual contracts. They total $32 million. This is a preventative and proactive approach to it. We're going to bring these back to council each year for funds for the following year, and we're going to identify all the work that we accomplished in the prior year. And with that, I'm happy to respond to any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Brown? Councilmember Albrecht.
More or less a comment than a question. I've always been proud that Clearwater's been very proactive on this kind of thing. So when this came before me and the amount of the contract, that's why I wanted to have the public understand, what we do. We really do a better job than any of the municipalities around us on taking care of our infrastructure. And this goes way back. If you look in the paper, you'll see St. Pete, you see all these municipalities around us have these breaks, and because they never look at it, it's underground. And, we make an effort. This is a big effort to take care of that proactively, so we don't have those spills.
Yeah, we appreciate the opportunity to inform the public. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Well, underground infrastructure is not sexy until it doesn't work. And we've seen the tragedy that's been going on in Jackson, Mississippi recently, where, they literally cannot drink water out of their tap. We take it for granted in this country that we have clean water, and we need to keep up with the infrastructure. So I certainly support this. Councilmember Bunker, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, we all had sticker shock when we saw that $32 million, and I appreciate the fact that we have these great one-on-ones. And correct me if I'm wrong, but when you say we're ramping up, we're doing substantially more work now with this extra money. We're going to get much more done.
Correct, yeah.
To the factor of 2 or 3 times.
Correct, yes. Yeah, yeah. And again, that's the idea with having the consultant on board. They're extension of staff. You know, it's a must to have an inspector out there to make sure the work's done properly and to our specifications, and they're gonna allow us to do that.
Anyone from the public to speak to item 11.2? Please come forward.
I'll fill out the card a little bit. Couple of questions, if I may. I'm Bill Johnson, 2694 Redford Court West in Countryside. Does this project, the scope of this project, address the saltwater intrusion associated with rising sea level? And has that been anticipated so that we won't have to do additional work after this project is started? And then the second question is are these programmed expenses part of the current rate study? Or is this something that we'll be doing additionally, so we'll see a significant increase in the utility rates? Just a couple questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. This is a part of the rate study, in my understanding. And then also, I think most of the manholes are being done for saltwater intrusion as well, Mr. Brown. Is that not correct?
Not exactly. This is a maintenance contract. We are looking at that with a different project, but not this particular one. These are as-needed contractors that once we identify work is needed through the television cameras that I showed you there, they go in, they'll inspect the pipes, they'll identify a defect, and then we have a contractor come out and replace them. So this is purely replacing our existing infrastructure.
But the manhole covers that we're replacing and redoing the tops, that was because of a lot of intrusion, was it not, from stormwater and saltwater?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought yes. Inflow and infiltration is how we refer to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've got other.
Yeah, just thought I'd pull that down.
Thanks.
Good afternoon, Council. I just got a question in reference to this, huge amount of money for utilities. Is this going to also cover the sinkholes that, the sewer have actually covered or actually caused in our streets? I didn't hear any mention that part of this money is actually going to be part of rehabilitating the streets after they have done the maintenance work. And I just need to get a clarification on that.
I'm going to have you answer all the questions after everyone's done.
That was Mohammed. I don't think he gave his name. Okay, my name's Lisa Lanza. I'm going to give you a little history on my street. We've been having for the last 10 years holes, and I'm home, and so I'm watching them, and I know they're sewer pipes, and the city told me for quite a while, oh no, those are stormwater pipes, don't worry about it. But then finally got somebody to come out with the maps, and we have no stormwater pipes in our street. They're all sewer pipes, which proves that the sewer pipes have been cracking for years and then causing holes. So I pleaded with the city, wrote so many emails, called, and this was before Mr. Jennings came, to please come out and smoke test our streets before you paved. Because we haven't had our streets paved. I mean, I've lived in the same house since 1978, and from what I recall, one time before this recent time. And I pleaded, please come out and before you pave and do smoke testing. It never happened. I mean, I stopped in at the various city offices. I mean, it was a real pain. I stopped here and there, and they were all like, I don't know. But anyway, the street got paved, and they never tested the sewer pipes. So now when you You know, we still have that one across the street that's little by little sagging again. So this kind of goes back to what Mohammed was saying. But I do want to say, it's because of the League of Women Voters in the late 1980s and early 1990s, we had Natural Resources Committee, I was on it, and we did a 2-year stormwater study, and we were the reason that the stormwater fee was first adopted at $3, and it was a very long haul. And it was not a popular thing, but we did, due to our research, the League of Women Voters, that is why we became one of the first cities in the state of Florida to adopt a stormwater fee. And I'm very proud of Clearwater for that, and the League of Women Voters. Thank you.
Anyone else for citizens to be heard? On this item, Mr. Brown, do you want to answer that last question?
Yeah, there was a prior question though about sinkholes and fixing the surface. And part of the contract is, it's not just to repair the pipe, it's to rehabilitate the road that, if it's impacted at all. As I mentioned, one of the groups, we can line a pipe without actually doing any excavation, but if there is, we certainly patch it and replace the surface. The second one, about smoke testing before we pave, that is part of the contract here. That's one of the sections that we're asking you to approve, so we can be more proactive in going throughout the city. We have a plan to try to get about 50% of the city done in the first year. We're trying to get really proactive about it. But I also add though that, you know, it's not always the sewer. The stormwater, there's a lot of other utilities underneath the ground. There's also different geotechnical and soil conditions that can make it appear as if it's a sinkhole. And there's also real legit sinkholes as well. Not sure if that.
Thank you. Anyone else on this item? Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve agenda 11.2.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. 11.3.
Approve work order and professional service agreement with Wanamaker Jansen Architects, Inc. of St. Petersburg, Florida, for the design of the new city hall in the amount of $2,948,340 pursuant to request for qualifications 24-22 and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same.
Thank you, Ms. Call. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tara Kivett, Engineering Director. This work order and professional services agreement covers the efforts and work necessary to design a new city hall. The scope includes an update to the previous space needs analysis, numerous concept designs, moving to construction documents, permitting, and full construction administration services through the end of the project. The design phase is anticipated to take 15 months. Construction is estimated at 18 months, with a completion in summer of 2025. I'd be happy to answer any of your questions, and also Jason Jensen with Wanamaker Jensen Architects is here to assist.
Any questions for Ms. Kivett? Vice Mayor?
As we move forward, because it's a 15-month-long design phase, can we expect maybe every other month or every 3 months an update on where we are with the design and, just a regular update as we go along?
Mr. Jennings?
Mr. Jennings about that?
Yes, certainly we will be, I'm not sure it'll be every other month because not a lot gets, but there will be periodic updates with the council, and certainly so you can see kind of the progress that's being made.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you for the budget comparisons that were asked for. Unfortunately, we're one of the big ones. But I would also point out that Largo and Dunedin's variance was pretty significant. Largo going from 58 million to 76 million, and Dunedin from 12.7 to 23.8, which was a 23.68 and a 46.64 increase respectively. So that is not insignificant. I'm on the record. I'm going to be a broken record one more time. I'll be voting against this item because I don't think we ought to be building a new city hall. The last estimate I heard was 34 million. I believe that we could put a joint city hall library in this facility We already have meetings here. I think could be done for between $2 to $4 million and save upwards of 30 million. And I think that money could either be saved or used for other more important things that citizens utilize on a daily basis. When this library was originally built, and I think Ms. Overmeyer must think I just hate libraries, and I do not, Jennifer. I want you to know that. I just think they've changed between now and 1999 when this library was originally envisioned. I just think libraries have changed. I know I don't have support for this, but I still think it's a mistake. And as soon as we sign this contract for architectural fees, then we are committed to building a new city hall. And I just think there's more creative ways we can solve the problem. So, anyone from the public like to speak to this item? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
Well, I'm gonna make a motion because we've been talking about building a new city hall for 25 years. And so I'm gonna make a motion to approve agenda item 11.3.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. 4-1 with myself in opposition. All right. We have a rule that we take a break every 2 hours. We are not going to get through the next item, and I apologize for all of you who are here for 11.4, but we're going to take a quick 8-minute recess, and then we'll reconvene and take on 11.4. Good evening. We will reconvene the September 15th, 2022 council meeting to order. We are on item 11.4.
Approve the selection committee's recommendation for the Clearwater Airport fixed base operator, RFP 38-22, authorize city staff to engage in negotiations with Fly USA Inc. and Paradise Ventures for the purpose of establishing a lease and operating agreement for fixed base operator services at the Clearwater Airport.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Eric Gandy, Marine and Aviation Director. I think quite a few people are out here this evening to speak to this, and I think it's important for me to provide a little background for their edification and to speak to the public on this. The Clearwater Airport's been in its current location in a variety of forms for 80 years. In the 60s, 50s, 60s, neighborhoods built up around that area, and for the past 22 years, it's been operated under a lease agreement with Clearwater Airport, Inc. Over that 22 years, Clearwater Airport has managed that airport under conditions that the city authorized 22 years ago. And that lease terms November 30th. Accordingly, we initially started looking at the option to extend the lease for a year while we investigated opportunities and just to try and see what public sector interest was out there. I had an Airport Advisory Board meeting subsequent to that time, and immediately after that Airport Advisory Board meeting, when I indicated that we may extend the lease, I started getting input. Public input, neighborhood input, interested firms, and individuals with ideas on management structures for that airport. I talked to Mr. Jennings about those types of interests, and the decision was made to put an RFP in the field to see what kind of private sector interest was out there. And understanding the sensitivity of the airpark and the location it resides in was critical to this RFP process. And I want to read something because drafting the RFP, I think when I read this, it'll put it in perspective for those that are here and those that may be watching. The city's goal is to continue to support the general aviation community while maximizing opportunities to activate the facility with operations that emphasize flight and neighborhood safety. Of particular interest are proposals demonstrating the ability to bring higher value but less intensive activities. So that was the premise of this RFP, and I think that can't be lost during this process. Certainly, we published that RFP, and we had 4 responses. We had an RFP committee. It was a very diverse committee made up of individuals throughout city departments with a variety of backgrounds: engineering, economic development, marine and aviation. The presentations and the responses and presentations were evaluated in August, and on both occasions, the committee unanimously recommended Fly USA as the entity to negotiate with. And I think this is important to remember. Generally speaking, that committee's decision results in negotiations. In this instance, Mr. Jennings and I communicated about the situation and the importance of public input in this process. Accordingly, we had a special session of the advisory board for the airport. We put this on the work session, and here we are tonight. So we've made additional stops along the way because I think every time I talk to somebody about the airport, there are different ideas. And I think we need to provide the public the opportunity tonight to provide us with additional ideas and input. I didn't do it to put you guys on the spot. And I want to reassure you of that. But what I will tell you is that the committee makes these decisions in a silo. We review the proposals, we review the presentations, and we review them on face value. You guys have the difficult task of evaluating in the court of public opinion and in situations where they impact the surrounding area. I truly believe that the respondent in this case, Fly USA, put forth a plan that allows us to capitalize some things. It addresses some of the concerns over intensity and may trade a less intensive activity for a more intensive. But what I will tell you tonight is, in my conversations with folks about this thing, each user group, each individual has a different dog in the hunt. There's a different angle, there's a different user group that may be impacted one way or the other. So that can't be lost during this process either. I think that I've seen it and I've spoken to enough people that there's competing needs and competing ideas about this. So I have Fly USA here tonight. We're prepared to answer even more questions that this council may pose to us. But at the end of all of it, I'm here to request your permission to negotiate with Fly USA. So I'll take a seat and allow the public to speak to this.
Well, we also have Mr. King here, who is the
Yes.
current FBO.
Yes.
Mr. Gandy, I want to thank you. You've inherited one department with two different functions, and I think you've done a marvelous job. So the air park has always been difficult. Having gone back to 2002 when I first got elected, I mean, you know, the air park's been there for over 90 years. So everything grew around it. Used to be gladiola farms out there. And the residential grew around it. And I remember when we had some tragedies, you know, at the air park in the early 2000s. And it wasn't due to the air park, it was due to mechanical and pilot error and other things. And so I've seen the ups and downs at the air park. And I think there are a bunch of different competing interests, folks with different priorities. So it's never easy. So I want to thank you, you know, for your work on this whole project. I just want that to be publicly said.
Thank you very much.
So any questions at this time from the council?
Not right now.
Okay. I want to open it up to citizens at this time. Now's your time.
Let me try again.
And if you all could just fill out a comment card.
Sorry, I'm bleeding from your chair back there, but anyway. My name is Bob Freer. I am an American Airlines pilot, a captain on a 787 based out of Miami. I have over 30,000 flight hours, 47 years flying, and I'm in my 30th year with the airline. I'm also a little airplane pilot, and I love little airplanes. So as much as I like the 787, I like my 152 just as much. I just learned of this issue just a couple weeks ago, so I wasn't, trying to catch up with everything. My biggest concern is the loss of hangar space, and to a lesser degree, on a personal level, the mixing of high and low speed aircraft. That is a real danger, I can tell you. Fly USA's plan appears to be structured around turboprop charter service. That's the reason for the big corporate FBO and the crew car and the lounges and all that kind of stuff. And it appears to be more of a businessman's airport is what they want to make it, not a general aviation field. The talks of a restaurant, it's just not viable on a small business. We have hundreds of pilots that go through our training center in Charlotte. We couldn't make one work there. There's just not enough business. High-value customers, I heard from the 12th meeting who defined two different ways from Fly USA as nicer airplanes and kind of more money coming in that way. And Mr. Gandy talked about getting rid of derelict airplanes. What they really are is rich people that need to get from A to B, and they're going to charter an airplane. That's what high-value customers are. Electric airplane talk is just trendy sales pitch. They're a decade away at minimum from happening, so this whole green thing. I heard talk of LPV approaches. I don't have a problem at all with approaches, quite frankly. If they were to have this operation, I'd be more comfortable flying on the day when it was 300 overcast than the bright, sunny day, because that's when the little planes are going to be out with the big planes. When it's overcast, it's going to be the guys that are shooting approaches only. I recommend the city decide what they want that airpark to be. Do you want it to be a community family place, or do you want it to be a corporate business? What's the goal? Is it supposed to be for profit? Is it a place to provide a service for the citizens of the county? I got 22 seconds. Or is it meant to be, does it have to be funded totally from whoever's there, or can you contribute? Anyway, I'm against it under its current form, and absolutely at the bare minimum, we cannot lose any more hangars in this county, period. They need to add them. There's a waiting list for years and years to get into a hangar.
Are you a
But I'm out of
tenant?
time.
Are you a tenant?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm getting ready to not be one apparently. So, thank you.
I better run.
We're not going to shut anybody down.
Let's try again.
Yes, sir.
Time's a charm.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, John Jennings. Margot, I don't know your first name, City Attorney Margolis. I'm here to talk in opposition to 11.4. And I'm not opposed to the idea that the city do an RFP and reassess the airpark in any way, I'm opposed to the way this was done. I think it caught a lot of people by surprise. You're going to hear from a lot of people who are going to say, I heard about this yesterday kind of things. This is not the kind of thing that needs to be done that quickly. You have an operator there. He's been there for 22 years. If you want him there for another year or half a year or whatever, there's nothing that would stop that from happening as far as I know. David's here to speak to that, but I'm proposing something entirely different. And it's entirely different only in the sense that it's the way every city-owned airport in this state is done. The city operates the airport. The city rents the city-owned property. Hangars are city-owned property. Tie-downs are city-owned property. It's not done by an FBO. FBOs are typically contractors that do services like sell the fuel, maintain the aircraft, do flight instruction, provide services. But the actual public property is managed by the public entity that owns it, the city. And that is without exception. Now, I've heard that that's not practical here, but there's no explanation not only of why it's not practical, but why it's not preferable. I used some numbers that came from the RFP, actually. There was an appraisal in that RFP, and you all have page 85 from that. That's your appraisal. And unfortunately, it didn't really reduce things to simple numbers. So I did the math and looked at what it was saying this airpark should be generating just on rental income from the hangars. We're not talking about rental income from industries like businesses that do aircraft maintenance or whatever. Strictly the hangar income. And as you can see there, according to the study they did, it's $732,000. That number is a little ambitious, but I'm not going to argue with your study, other than to say that I think if you took a close look at it, you'd see the number would be a little lower than that. But what the city realizes now from the hangar rental part of this deal, it's nowhere near that number. And it could be that number. So the city, the airpark rather, is pretty much maxed out. There's no room for more planes in the T hangars. There's no more room. I thought there was some room in the shade hangars, but I just heard tonight that the shade hangars are filled up too. The airport is pretty full right now, and, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Gagliano.
Okay. Well,
and we do appreciate your email with all the information. I know you put a lot of work into it.
Very good. Thank you all.
Yes, sir.
Well, my name is Donald Cocker. I've lived in Pinellas County all my life, and I've been a airplane owner at the airport there for 20 years. And today's the first time I heard about this. I heard that it was up for renewal because I asked them about our Christmas party, which we didn't have because of COVID, and they said, well, that's up in the air. Well, anyway, one of the things I want to mention before I forget it, the invocation tonight was the best invocation I've ever heard at a public meeting. You guys should take note of that every time you make a decision, what he said. So the thing is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. What we have there now is working fine. Now, I've heard from different people that live around there that they don't like the training going on. Well, I say the airport was there before they moved there, so they should have took that into account when they moved there. And I say you should go on the way it is. We don't need it for just a place for rich people. I was involved with saving Albert Whitted Airport, and the mayor down there thought he could get it got rid of by having a vote on it. And he didn't. But they changed to a different provider, which these guys run several airports, and I used to be able to go talk to the head guy there, or I could talk to the lady that ran the airport for the city, and after that, these people are, the head person of that company is somewhere else. So take that into account. You got a guy there that, I have no gripes with him. The only gripes I've had since I've been there is some of the bonehead rules that come down from city people that are not aviation people. So that's pretty much what I got to say.
From us, Mr. Coker, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Okay, I hope I can get through all this in 3 minutes. Kelly O'Donnell, Clearwater resident. While you know me as the chair for the city's Air Park Advisory Board, I'm here now as a resident of the city of Clearwater and user of the Clearwater Air Park. These thoughts are my own, do not represent that of the board. I live under the flight path to the beach, and for those aircraft coming back from it, one of my favorite things to do besides flying myself is to be in my pool, looking up, determining if I know who that is up flying. Even if I don't know the student personally, I know which aircraft are the flight schools, and I'm excited to see the need for more pilots being filled. While many do not think of helicopters as much for training, these pilots also need some place to train and fulfill jobs such as air ambulance, news gathering, pipeline patrol, etc. There are minimal options of where helicopter pilots can get trained, and I think having helicopter training here highlights Clearwater Air Park as a destination. Therefore, I think we should keep all flight school operations as is, but I'm open to not increasing from what they are currently. This includes maintaining flight school being open 7 days a week, including weekends, although I am open to hearing about it being closed on major holidays because everybody wants time to spend with friends and family. To me, the air park is its own unique neighborhood, a place where families have grown up, including a local retired astronaut who also completed her flight training there. I think people forget about the long-standing community that's within the air park. Some things to keep in mind. The air park currently employs approximately 50 employees, including the flight school and the maintenance. I would like to see these employees offered option for retainment if they desire under a new lease. Since at least 2001, the EAA chapter has flown over 2,000 young eagles on free introductory flights. There are 8 opportunities scheduled for 2023. I hope these kind of opportunities are retained and encouraged. Other community involvement activities include the annual open house, Christmas event, Wine, Wings, and Wheels, which has currently raised approximately $1 million for local residents with developmental disabilities, base for the Civil Air Patrol, base for EAA Chapter 282, who not only provide these Young Eagles flights, but facility tours for local students, including those from the National Aviation Academy, base for the 99's International Organization of Women Pilots Florida Suncoast Chapter, who have introduced hundreds of Girl Scouts to aviation, resulting in their aviation badges earned. These types of events should continue to be encouraged and better advertised by the city. As of September 13th, a total of 145 aircraft are based at the air park, only 1 turbine, the rest being single-engine, multi-engine, and helicopters, with single-engine pistons making up approximately 90% of the tenants. There's been a shade tea hanger wait list for the past 20 years that is currently up to 150 people, with multiple people calling every day to inquire about the list and being added to it. There's only approximately 5 people on the corporate hanger wait list. I again stress the council to prioritize building new shade or tea hangers versus corporate hangers, and I can send you.
Thank you, Ms. O'Donnell.
Anybody else? Good evening, everybody. My name is David King, and I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but I only have a couple of suggestions about the air park, and I think they're going to be helpful for everybody. The one thing, let me just say this first. Thanks for letting me be there for 22 years. We love this place. It's a great little airport, a lot of good people, and most of them don't have a lot of money, contrary to what people think about people that fly planes. I mean, I have people, we have carried them on their rent because they couldn't pay it. I've loaned the air park money when we didn't have money. It's a great place, but I am not opposed to the change, and I understand Mr. Gandy and your guys' problem about the money's got to come from somewhere. I mean, we've made improvements, not as many as we want. Some people have different visions for the air park. My only biggest concern, and I am not one that's, talking about danger, but if you're going to make this change, you owe it to the community, I think, to bring an expert in, spend a little bit of money, and get professional opinions about mixing small airplanes with big airplanes. I could show you untold problems of people crashing, and I told the committee before, one will be too many. We've already had a couple. People have died, it's terrible. But we haven't had a big one. If we have one of these corporate jets collide with a small plane, God forbid, I mean, we're not going to be able to live with ourselves. So take the time, investigate it, spend a little bit of money. The other part of it is, and this is nothing against anybody here, but we have people on the committee and people here making decisions about airplanes. I don't think anybody flies. I don't think anybody understands what we're talking about. We're talking about planes going hundreds of miles an hour, carrying people, mixing in with new student pilots in the same place. So, thank you for letting me be here for 22 years. If I don't get to stay, it's okay. It's been a hell of a ride. And if I don't stay, I have suggestions about the new lease that'll make the neighbors happy and make everything safer, and I do it for free. And I will help you as much as I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. King.
Lisa Lanza. I drafted this letter to the Airport Advisory Board, but I never got a chance to send it. But it's about the money. I mean, all I hear from everybody is, where are we going to get the money? There's no money. How are we going to fix this airport? So I'm going to have to kind of move through this draft letter, but... Oh, gosh. Okay, I sent some links to different places, and I'm not going to read the links, but the above article is just one of many articles that can be found on the internet as an example of the many methods the City of Clearwater and Pinellas County have used historically to fund, for example, the Clearwater Marine Aquarium. Did you know that Mayor Hibbert has served as a member of the Clearwater Marine Aquarium Board of Directors? Mayor Hibbert also has served as the chair and member of the Ruth Eckerd Hall Board of Directors. Over the years, Mayor Hibbert and other board members in Clearwater, high society, have raised multi-million dollars of funds for their chosen nonprofit foundations, such as CMA and Ruth Eckerd Hall. They're not the only two, but the City of Clearwater, Pinellas County, and the state legislature have also granted Clearwater Marine Aquarium, Ruth Eckerd Hall, multi-millions of dollars over the years. I gave a couple of quotes to back that up, links to back up that statement. In addition, the City of Clearwater, Mayor, City Council, and staff always find a way to fund the many other projects that they support. For example, the City Council recently approved the issuance of $30 million ad valorem bonds for the downtown waterfront park. I gave a link to that. Does the Clearwater Air Park have a nonprofit organization with a board of directors, as does Ruth Eckerd Hall, Clearwater Marine Aquarium, the Jolly Trolley, the Clearwater Jazz Holiday, the Clearwater Chamber of Commerce, the Downtown Merchants Association, the Downtown Partnership, Clearwater for Youth, Habitat for Humanity, et cetera, et cetera? Perhaps if Mayor Hibbert and his associates were to serve on the Clearwater Air Park Foundation Board of Directors, They could raise funds for the necessary air park improvements and for more community enhancements and engagement activities at the airport. On the alternative, however, without a nonprofit, the mayor and his circle of friends, including Ruth Eckerd Hall and Clearwater Jazz Holiday Foundations and all the downtown private nonprofits and city staff, have worked together to fund a $22 million amphitheater and a $70 million downtown waterfront park. The city of Clearwater and Pinellas County have also approved the downtown area as an opportunity zone to bring investments to the downtown district area. Do you think it is now time for the Hercules Industrial Park and Clearwater Air Park to get some attention from the city and county, including the infusion of funds to benefit our area of the county? By the way, I live near the airport. I don't know if I told you that. We have a new district county commissioner, Latvala, who served on the Florida Appropriations Committee. He certainly knows where the money can be found for the Clearwater Air Park. And I gave a link to something there, which I don't remember what it was. Many years ago, I took my first and only glider airplane ride at the Clearwater Air Park.
Thank you, Ms. Lanza. Ms. Lanza, I've also served on Homeless Empowerment Project and Salvation Army, so I want you to know those two.
They're wonderful fundraisers.
No. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Frank Scalzo. My family and I have lived on the north side of the airport for the past 26 years, and in the last 10 years, they extended the runway, expanded its hours, and increased its flight training, and as predicted, has contributed to a decrease in the quality of life for the surrounding neighborhoods. Oftentimes, the middle part of our fair city sounds more like an air show or military base instead of a community air park. The cause is not the hobbyist or business person or vacationer, it's the flight school. It's the airplane flyovers with students practicing takeoffs and landings every 60 seconds to 5 minutes for many hours in a row. It's the 6 helicopters showed up 5 years ago without neighborhood or council's knowledge. Last year, Mr. King was gracious enough to meet with us, and as a result, he asked the pilots to change their path on approach. It did help some, but they still make neighborhood flyovers, and also when a student flies solo for the first time over the neighborhoods. We hear them at home, we hear them inside our church, we hear them at my son's middle school, we hear them at our Little League games. The average decibel level for an overhead plane or helicopter can be between 75 and 80, which is about the same as a vacuum cleaner or lawnmower. A few times a day, not too bad. 100 times a day, it's debilitating. Trust me. We call and we're told, I'm sorry, it's a beautiful day, or students need to practice. There's nothing we can do under the current lease. This is city property, and whoever you choose to operate on this land does so at the pleasure of the city and its citizens. Whether it's Ruth Eckerd in Coachman Park or charter boats in the Marina, no other entity receives this kind of freedom, which has led to overuse. I'm not here to debate the value of training because the answer is self-evident. But the Tampa Bay region has 7 other municipal air parks within an hour's drive from here, most of which fly over water or farmlands. Because of our population, it's our opinion that training should not be included in the new lease. If it is allowed to remain, then strict rules should be added, such as noise reduction devices for all planes, exclusion of helicopters, exclude training on Sundays, holidays, and after 5 p.m., limit training to 4 hours a day, include a city contact with authority to investigate complaints. Finally, the current lease agreement was made public a few months ago, and I was shocked to learn under Article 3, Section D and E, it states, the normal operating hours for flight training and aircraft rental will be from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., 5 days per week. That has never been followed. Just got a text from my son, who's doing AP homework. He said a lesson was going on about an hour ago. So, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Scalzo.
Good evening. My name is Melissa Stamos. I live at 1865 Gilbert Street, which is directly west of the air park. I'm here, I'm frankly undecided about which way you should go. But as a concerned resident, there are a few things that I would like to speak to, primarily being expansion. As we all know, the landings was a big issue in our neighborhood. The referendum voted it down. As per the presentation that Fly USA made, Mr. Shevlin stated they went from a $100,000 enterprise to a $1.3 million a month enterprise. And Mr. Connor noted that there was capability for a 500,000 square foot retail restaurant and workforce housing. This rendering that has been provided is certainly not a small community airfield. This is a corporate air park. We have safety concerns, we have expansion concerns. Now, the Fly USA group was nice enough to meet at a neighborhood association. They did say that they would be more than happy to include language that would exclude future development of the landings. As a resident, I feel that should be part of it, including Fly USA, its subsidiaries, joint ventures, investment groups, or future divisions of that company be prohibited from including the landings in their future development. I would also like to see language prohibiting air traffic after a certain hour. I'm sorry, air turbine engines are going to be louder. There's no way around that. Also, I would like assurances that they would not remove the trees nor put in excessive LED lighting to disrupt the neighborhood. Again, I am undecided, but I think these factors should be taken into consideration when entering into lease negotiations with any party. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stamos. Anyone else before I close public comment?
Hello, my name is Michelle Berkland. I am a student at the air park, and I can tell you that yes, there is a lot of training there, but there can be a lot more if it is already limited. There is a 3-month wait time to get a lesson, even in their most popular plane. I've been trying to schedule lessons, I can tell you that with absolute certainty. So, flight training is the future of aviation. All the airline pilots, astronauts, everyone in the field of aviation that flies anything comes through a small airport and learns in a small plane. This is a critical part of our future of our infrastructure as a society and the future of aviation as a whole. To limit that, to remove it, to make it more difficult to access would be to limit the future of our society through aviation. I have a lot to say, but I wasn't really prepared to speak today. I think that is all I have.
Thanks for coming out, Ms. Berkland.
Okay. Good evening, panel, Mayor. I was here last Friday with the Airport Advisory Board, going over a few things. I'm not opposed to making a change in the
If you could just
airport.
state your name for the record.
I'm sorry, Ron Stryker. Yeah. Clearwater resident. Also, I live in the traffic pattern of the airport too. I purposely bought my house there. Anyway, I'm not opposed to making changes to the air park. We need changes. I got my license there in 1976. I even ran the airport operation there in 78. We had 300 active members with 32 brand new airplanes on the line. We never had any problems. We used to make trips everywhere in them, and people complained. But I also know that we have other issues with the city too that people don't like. I mean, up and down Hercules Avenue, my shop is like 2 blocks from the airport. I build engines for aviation airplanes, for a lot of the school planes. And I'm very picky on my engines. I want them right. I don't want to have any accidents with them. So I have an FAA guy that works with me, and we get it done. But anyway, Hercules Avenue is a dangerous place. The cops are not doing anything out there. We got hot rodders every single day, and the noise is excruciating. I hate it. I don't like it. But anyway, that's another story. But I think what we have right here at the air park, everybody's already talked about it,
I just want to reiterate what I think about it. It's a beautiful place, and I've lived in Clearwater since 1957. I've seen a tremendous change. I'm not opposed with these guys that with Fly USA want to get in there. If I had their opportunity, I would love to do that too, but we have an air park here. We have people that are learning to fly, just as this lady just said now. I don't see how we can change that and keep this airport under that, under the way we're running it. We haven't had any accidents lately. We have a pretty clear place, and we work pretty hard. I know I do. I'll speak for myself. I work pretty hard. I work with a lot of the pilots around there. I know just about all of them. I know a lot of CEOs of airlines, and I've worked with them. We try to keep it safe. That's the whole point of this air park. And I know we need money, but I think there's other ways of raising money to help this air park out. We just haven't heard about it. And I don't know, over the years, we've had some commissioners that weren't interested in it, but I'm hoping that all you are interested in the air park, because we have a lot of people from up north that come down here on vacation. They fly airplanes. They love coming in there. They say it's such a beautiful air park. And I understand that, and we try to accommodate them accordingly. But we're limited to what we can do. But I can go on and on tonight, and I'm not going to. I want to give somebody else a chance, but I appreciate your time, and I do thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Bob Gibson, Clearwater resident since 2010, but I moved here at age 5 in 1957 and attended grade school here up through 4th grade. That was the early 60s, and Clearwater Air Park was instrumental in inspiring me to become a pilot. During those early 60s, we were watching the Mercury astronauts launching into space for the first time. And my grandfather, Thomas T. Hilton, owned a duplex on Saturn, which he lived in half of, and that put me in walking distance of Clearwater Air Park and its 3 grass runways. So I have a long history with the airport. I became a licensed pilot in 1971 at age 18. I have never flown for the military or commercially. It's all general aviation, and I do it for the sheer joy that it brings me. I bought my first airplane in 1985, which I still own. It has been based at Clearwater Air Park since 1990. At last count, I have spent something in excess of $100,000 on tie-down fees and shade hangers and T hangers and fuel and other services. And I was unable to attend the presentation on Friday. Like the mayor, I was dealing with a health issue, and I wasn't good enough to be at that meeting. But I've tried to catch up through as many people who did attend that meeting as possible. And one of them is a past member of the advisory committee, Bruce Brock, a retired airline captain. I see that he has written a letter to council. I've read that letter. I agree with all the points he made on it. I would also like to mention that safety is an important thing to me. I have to date flown over 100 different makes and models, ranging from single-seat ultralights to 4-engine jets. And I now am a recipient of the Wright Brothers Master Pilot Award, which is something given to people who have flown for 50 consecutive years without a recordable accident or incident. If you do the math on it, out of the millions of licensed pilots, there are less than 9,000 who have received that. So it works out to something like a 0.1%. But that said, I've read what I could about this, and I think Fly USA is not a good fit. That ends my comments, but I do have an email I received from Fly USA that I would like to read into the record.
You're running out of time, but read as much as you can.
Mr. Gibson, we appear to be quickly getting off on the wrong foot. Can you please explain to me exactly why you're proposing that it's not good for general aviation?
Mr. Gibson, I'm sorry.
May I submit this?
You may submit it. If I give more time to you, I have to give more time to everybody.
I understand.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is Jamian Ortiz. I have been a pilot for 22 years. I earned my pilot's license and a degree in aeronautical science at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University at Daytona Beach, which is a Class Charlie airspace. I've flown in numerous airports around Florida. I've been flying and participating in other activities at the Clearwater Airpark for about half a decade now. It is a true community there. It is not an airport. It is an air park. You need to make that distinction because in my opinion, bringing a corporate office and making that the priority is going to impact the bond you have with the community. I've had the opportunity to spend time with pilots who own or rent the hangars and see that the airplanes they're working on, that the airplanes are flying. It's just been a wonderful opportunity for me. I know you folks have a difficult decision to make, but I ask that you don't take it lightly. It's a decision that's going to impact the next 30 to 50 years, and I do think that there are improvements needed, but I think that keeping the community in mind is the most important thing, and not profit. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Ortiz. Anyone else?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Brian Unk, 625 Court Street, on behalf of Fly USA, and Mr. Shevlin, who's here to answer any questions that you have after public comment closes. As you know, we had a very productive meeting with the Air Park Advisory Board on Friday, over 2 hours, answered many, many questions, heard from the public, which is the most important thing, listened, engaged, got to know additionally more people that use the air park and care about the air park, and have interacted with them and addressed a lot of the concerns that have been raised. The question before you tonight is about the RFP that the city put out, a competitive bidding process. You all are very familiar with reviewing RFPs and RFP responses. And in this case, we have, even after the video presentations where the committee got to interact with the respondents, the next closest respondent was 20 points behind Fly USA. And that shows you how prepared Fly USA is to meet this challenge. This challenge is a balance of competing interests. You have students who want flight training. You have general aviation enthusiasts who've been there for decades who want to have access to a hangar, to a space for a plane that's affordable. You have a neighborhood that has significant concerns about safety, about hours of operation, about noise. And the question before you tonight is, who do you negotiate with based on the competitive bidding process that was put out by the city, the review criteria that were established for the responses, who is most prepared to meet that challenge going into the future, and who is most prepared to also meet that balance while fulfilling your 2020 air park layout plan. And this is the part where we talk about deferred maintenance. That's a safety concern. We talk about activating the air park to draw in more people. We talk about giving the Civil Air Patrol and the EAA better space. So what we're proposing is improving the air park for everyone, not deferring that, not keeping it the way it is because you can't keep it the way it is. You can't. No one wants to see the air park fall into a state where you can't allow people to use it because it's unsafe. And the only way you can do that is if you unlock and activate those FDOT funds. And they will match 80% of a project cost. So a $1.5 million investment up front will get you $5.8 million in from FDOT. If you approve the negotiations, we have a meeting with FDOT with Mr. Gandy and Mr. McDonald and Mr. Shevlin set for Monday at 10 a.m. And we're looking forward to continue to proactively work with the community. One other thing I want to mention, Mr. Shevlin lives here. He will be at the air park. He will be at the air park advisory board meetings. People, tenants, active tenants, they are not going to be displaced. They will be worked with. EAA will be accommodated. CAP will be accommodated. And Mr. Shevlin's here to answer any questions or address any concerns you have. Thank you.
Yes.
One comment was submitted by Clearwater Neighborhoods. Dear Mayor and City Council, How is that a special Air Park Advisory Board meeting was called that last Friday, and now this lease recommendation is already on your calendar to approve a few days later? The AAB had meetings in May and August with no mention of the lease or RFP on their agendas. We, the neighborhoods, all knew the current FBO lease was set to expire at the end of November 2022. The AAB was briefed about this well over a year ago at their meetings, yet they had no input on the RFP and was then asked at the 11th hour to comment on it. Who developed the RFP at the last minute? Did the council or city management approve the RFP prior to issuing? Why wasn't a special meeting of the AAB called before the RFP went out? Why was the topic absent on their 2022 AAB agendas? Why didn't this RFP go out at the beginning of the year? This is likely to be a 10-20-year lease agreement, and the community was given no chance to provide their input before this week. There are many concerns and unanswered questions. How is it that the city will hold neighborhood charrettes and meetings for park designs, traffic calming, and other feel-good projects? It is insulting that residents are asked to review PUF projects years in advance of the project, but given no opportunity to comment on a long-term lease that involves city-owned property that will have an impact on residents' day-to-day lives for decades. What is the last-minute rush now with this new lease? The city calendar contains an upcoming public meeting for a meet and greet for the CRA director candidates. My guess is likely less than 10 residents will attend. A public meeting on the Air Park lease would have drawn hundreds of residents, just like the Landings meetings did. It seems like the city is afraid to let the public know what developer-led plans they now have for the Air Park and hope to ink a new lease deal under the neighborhood's radar.
Anyone else before I close public comment? Okay, seeing no one else. Mr. Margolis, just one thing that was brought up was the landings and expanding into the landings. That would not be possible.
That's correct. As we discussed Monday at the work session, and I think certainly for the benefit of the public here, the Landings golf course, like all real estate, is zoned a certain way, and it is zoned for OSR, which is open space and recreation. Based on that zoning, it cannot be anything other than open space or recreation. Furthermore, our city charter has specific restrictions on any real estate in the city that is zoned as this OSR or open space recreation. So in order to even change the zoning of the Landings, it would require a referendum from voters. So there is no time in the foreseeable future when that is likely to happen, but if it ever did happen, it would require approval by voters at referendums. So that is definitely, I would say, of all the things we heard tonight, that's probably the least of.
It doesn't need to be negotiated because it would have to go to referendum. That's kind of my point.
It will have to go to referendum, so it's a non-issue. Whether we put it in the agreement or not, it's not going to matter.
Okay. Questions for Fly USA from the council? We do have Mr. Shevlin here. Would you like to say a few words? Yes.
But first I wanted to say I'm happy to hear from all the pilots today. Whenever we hear about the airport, it's from neighbors who are complaining about the noise, especially the helicopters, and complaints about the air park not being a good neighbor. I was hoping that Fly USA would be able to greatly reduce those problems, and I want to hear from you how that's going to take place. I also want to hear how Fly USA is going to make all the changes they're making and not displace any of the pilots. That seems to be a big challenge. And I'll say this, I grew up in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, home of the annual EAA convention. My dad was not a pilot, but he was an airplane buff, and as a little kid, we used to drive out to the edge of our small airport in Oshkosh, park there, and watch the planes land and take off for hours. That was what my dad loved to do. And then we'd stop at Dairy Queen, which is what I love to do. So I am, understand the passion for flying. I also would like to see the place run professionally. So my concerns are noise and safety, without hurting the folks who love that as a home.
Look, those are a lot of questions, so if I miss something, let me know. But, I've been using the word balance a lot in these meetings, and this really is about balance. The intensity of the flight training activity is an issue for the neighborhoods from a noise perspective, but it's also an issue for other pilots that are based there. So it's not just about noise, and like Mr. Scalza had addressed. It's also about other pilots that are coming to use the facility. So I think there's a balance. As I said in the last previous couple meetings, the quantity, the volume of flight training in the last 12 months has doubled. So it's gotten out of balance. So the problem has gotten worse. We do not want to eliminate or remove the flight school. That has always been a part of our plan going forward. Is that there's going to be a flight school based there. Do we want to reduce the volume? Yes. What does that look like? I think we're going to have to work through that. But that is certainly our intention. As far as displacing pilots, there's right now, I want to remind you guys that our plan, our proposal was guided by the master plan, right? And the master plan was contemplated removing the 30 shade hangars and replacing them with 30 T hangars. So there's been a narrative that we want to take down the shade hangars and displace those tenants. All of those tenants will have other options. We know some want to upgrade and move into T hangars, but the waiting list has been too long. By building additional ones, we'll have that. They'll have that option.
Can you quickly explain what a T hanger is?
Basically, a T hanger is inside. There's like a garage door on the front, so it's completely enclosed. Where a shade hanger is just a metal roof out in the open.
Okay.
That's the difference.
And because the plane is like a T, they alternate.
Right. Right, so no intention to displace any active pilots. We do have derelict planes that we talked about that are scattered around the air park. As you remove those, you obviously have room for other folks to move in there that are more active. We're extremely passionate about general aviation, and I thought that came across throughout our proposal. Did I miss something?
I think those were my concerns, yeah.
Other questions?
I have some.
Vice Mayor?
Okay, well, first, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yep. And I wanted to say a special thank you for the people that have emailed in and the people who commented tonight, as well as on Friday's special Air Park Advisory Board meeting, which I watched. A special, shout out to Frank and Lori Scalzo. So Frank is here. Kelly O'Donnell wrote a really nice summary of that Air Park Advisory Board last Friday. Beth Davis has some significant questions, and this Dennis McDermott, who did not show up, also sent a very, very thoughtful, detailed email articulating some questions and concerns. And it was wonderful that, and people tonight too, nobody was not in my backyard. Maybe there was one that was just like, let's just keep it the way it is. But people seem to realize that we need to do some improvements, and it's not, all just black or white. So that's encouraging, and especially the emails where people are making suggestions. Please do this, rather than just, please don't do this, and then go figure it out. One of my concerns goes back to when I think there's some fuzzy math there and some suppositions that you're going to get 80% FDOT or 50% FDOT, and what if we have these gaps? And so, you say you're giving over $7 million to the city over the initial term, and we need to know, how do you get to that number? You've got 1.5 to prepay for 5 years, then at the 5-year mark, then another 1.5. You do say we have a revenue share of 3%, but what totals over $7 million with a revenue share and fuel surcharge?
I was, just to clarify on that one question, I was answering a very specific question with that was in the RFP, that specifically said to include the value of the improvements that the city receives as part of the total compensation to the city. So we used so we added the rent that we were paying plus the anticipated FDOT funding for that first phase, and I'm calling a phase a 5-year period. And that is where that number came from. But it wasn't a marketing number. We were answering a very specifically written question in the RFP document, which I recognize has caused a good bit of confusion. So
What if you don't get the FDOT grants at 80%?
I think we'll know that in the next, week or two. I mean, candidly, if the FDOT funding and we don't have a mechanism to get comfortable with that, we would not move forward. I mean, we've been fairly clear about that.
So if you don't move forward, there's no more contract negotiations?
That we consider that a component of the contract negotiations, correct?
Okay. So there's some concern about the lack of details in the RFP, and I can agree and sympathize with residents who say this seems rushed. And I understand that Mr. Gandy came on and took on 2 departments and may not, whatever it was, it would have been nicer, as the last comment that was read, if there was a longer runway and certainly more public engagement, especially with the Airport Advisory Board on the front end. What might an RFP look like? What do you think our residents want to see, or go out and ask residents, particularly in that community? And with not having that done and not having, I think, perhaps not enough adequate details in the response to the RFP, and with a November expiration date, I mean, I think there might be some value in extending the contract with the current operator. I mean, just to think about it, for another 3 or 6 months, to give a little more space, because quite frankly, when you go into negotiations for a contract and you've only got 2 months, I mean, they're in the driver's seat a little bit more, I think, there's a rush to get it done. And so I just wonder about that, if that might be a prudent course of action.
No, I mean, I can speak to it, and I've mentioned this in my opener, certainly. We prepared an extension initially. I had an Air Park Advisory Board, and multiple people spoke to ideas about this air park. That's what precipitated the discussion about initiating the RFP process and putting an RFP in the field. That went out at the end of June. I think if you've seen the comments from everybody that's been here tonight, they're consistent with what I've seen all along. There is no consistency. Every user group has a different angle. So if I'm a student, I want to keep the student pilot portion open, in the flight schools open. If I'm a resident, I want to reduce flight school. If I'm a current tenant, I don't want my rates to go up. I want self-service fuel. There are so many different competing interests that it would be exceptionally difficult in a business transaction to try and incorporate them into a lease agreement. And I'll give you a good example. If we had tremendous feedback and said, yes, we're going to get rid of the flight school, that's part of the lease agreement going forward, strike that. We eliminate the potential for a flight school, and that's part of the 3-legged stool that keeps that place afloat financially. You have hangar rentals, you have fuel flowage, and you have the subleases, and the flight school also contributes to the fuel flowage. So I think those are the challenges when you start to try and incorporate external input into what amounts to a city business decision. So, that's trying to explain why we moved this along and where we came from.
But I would say a couple things about that is that it seems like what we have operationally now has gotten out of hand. It is not operating the way it should have been. There are far too many helicopter flights going along. You know, people have said there's been exponential increase in these flight takeoffs and landings, especially the helicopters that have really impacted their quality of life within the last 5 years. And are there guidelines that have not been followed? And how can we be assured that if things are going to kind of remain the same, but, you know, a little different, that things are going to be enforced the way they're written? You know.
I can speak to that.
But that needs to be in a contract.
Correct, and I took up the department a couple months ago, and I can assure you I'm a rules guy. And quite frankly, yes, if you're going to incorporate those, as you should, into a contract, then you need to make sure they're enforced. What good is a contract if you're not enforcing the provisions of the contract?
Exactly.
I can't do maintenance on my vehicle in a hangar. I can't build an apartment in a hangar. I can't do some of these things, and they shouldn't occur on an airport. I also want to speak to something, because this has come up a lot, FAA funding and the mystery of all that. Well, I spent a little bit of time reviewing the 508-page guidance on airport administration. There are some components in there that speak to some of the things. If you accept FAA money, there's some assurances you have to give. That means you can't discriminate against types of aircraft. So if you took FAA money, as we've discussed in this body, then I can't say no helicopters. So we have to be very careful when we negotiate this agreement, when we look at the terms from a financial perspective and what we want that air park to look like. So, you know, those are my reassurances to you, is that we'll look at all that. And if we get to a point where it's not going to fit into the city's needs and profile for that air park, then, as Mr. Shevlin said, if certain conditions aren't met on his side, he's got to walk from the deal. We've got to do the same thing. That's just the nature of what this is.
I think, you know, and a couple of comments that I think this was Mr. Scalzo that was here about, that there are schools within an hour's drive. There are 7 other municipal parks within an hour's drive, all which fly over water, farmlands, or less population. I mean, is that true? And, you know, can our flight school people go somewhere else where it's not in the middle of a neighborhood? Can we really limit it here? And especially, it seems like the helicopters are just really the ones that need to be limited the most. I mean, just from...
So, any general aviation airport has a component of their revenue and of their business model that's reliant on flight schools. I learned to fly at a little uncontrolled field over in Tampa. That's just part of the mix and the revenue, as I mentioned, the components, rentals, hangar rentals, fuel flowage, and flight schools, or a sublease with an AMP repair shop, something of that nature. So, you know, yes, there are other options, but if you've heard, the demand is tremendous. So this thing is a difficult balancing act. And unfortunately for you guys, you're thrust into the middle of it, but as you've seen, every comment is a competing interest. And that's what makes this exceptionally difficult to get the right deal and the right balance.
But you had those priorities, which was safety, it was improving quality of life around the neighborhood, and financial viability, right? Was there something else?
And you know, I think there's a misconception about the amount of money that an airport like that has the potential to generate. My department's revenues have vacillated. We've been in the black by 70 grand, and last year we lost $11,000 in 2021. That's the reality of what this looks like. So I think that the upside under the same model is constrained. And I think Mr. King, over the years, has done what the city has asked him to do and has kept a lid on expansion, but has still tried to fill the gaps with flight schools and things like that. So it's a tough business model. It's a tough location, and there's limited availability for pilots around this region. So, the thought that I'm going to drive out to Zephyr Hills from Clearwater to take a flying lesson is problematic.
Councilmember Albritton.
Well, one of the things when this was brought to me, that the first thing I wanted to see was the pro forma. I wanted to see numbers and see how all this stuff worked out. And then we had a good conversation over the phone that will come over with the negotiations on the next phase. So this kind of reminded me of what we went through with the Bluff properties. We had to make a decision on who we were going to pick, but we didn't know really the details of it. That came on the next phase of negotiations. So here's what I see on this. I took flight school there in 1978. And I just went back a couple of years ago, got my commercial UAV license. I mean, it is something that has been in our community a long time. I remember that used to be used more as a community source. It seems to me, in my memory of back in the, when I was younger, it was more of a family-oriented kind of a place that you could go to. And I've seen the last couple of years I've been in there with certain issues. They've asked me to go in and talk to some of the pilots there on some of the things that you mentioned were being done in the hangars that were unacceptable. And I could see it's really in disrepair. I mean, and I understand that this is an enterprise fund that sometimes doesn't meet the budget because, like you said, it's a balance. It's a very tentative thing. It is very important for us to have this in our community. So the way I'm looking at this is and we just got this not long ago, you kind of went out and said, look, how are we gonna change this? Give us some out-of-the-box things that we haven't been doing that could maybe turn this thing around. And the company that came up with an idea that looks like it may work is here. We don't know if it's going to work. I think the meeting you're going to have next week with FDOT is going to be very telling for both of us. But I think you've met the demands of the neighborhood, of the pilots, of the school. Again, we're talking balance here. And I think you've tried to balance that out. Everybody's not going to be happy, but I think being in the middle, everybody can live with this if it works out. Now, the only concern I have, and I know that you guys are you're thinking of safety first because that's what we need to do at an airport, is how the small planes and the turboprops mix. And I don't know enough to know how that works. I've had, as Vice Mayor Beckman said, we've got a lot of letters from different people that know more than I do, and some people have concerns about that. And I think that's something we need to know a little more about.
I think it'd be beneficial if Mr. Shevlin speaks to the intensity that they anticipate. And I think that's an important component of this. I think when you have a student pilot doing pattern work and they've flown around the pattern 50 times versus a different level of intensity that I think he can expand upon that might be helpful in that space.
Thank you, Eric. So, I want to answer that question kind of two ways. The first is what Eric was referring to, which is just the volume of flights in general. I think we've been pretty clear that over the course of a few years, we'd like to see 10% of the planes based at the air park be in the turboprop category. And and those planes are typically taking off a few times a week, not many, many times a day. So there is, I understand the concerns of higher speed planes and lower speed planes mixing in the traffic pattern. I think it's a legitimate concern, but also the turboprops they're not mid-sized jets. Their speeds are much closer to pistons than a mid-sized jet is. I used to fly a Piper Meridian, which was a turboprop, and our landing speed was 85 knots. And, you have Cirrus SR-22s on the field where the landing speed is 80 knots. That's not a huge delta. It's not, turboprops are not running, we're not bringing twin turbine jets into the air park. So we're confusing those, I think we're confusing the issues a little bit, if that's a fair response.
Okay, well, I mean, I can understand that.
Can I ask something, Councilmember Albritton, on that, just piggybacking? At St. Pete Clearwater, I know they have a control tower and everything else, but are there different speed planes? Obviously, we have commercial jets coming in there, but are there?
There's actually a busier flight school there than at the air park. ATP has their flight school there, and I think they have.
They got 2 runways.
Okay, gentlemen, I'm sorry.
So there are quite a few piston planes based there as well. And as you know, Legion is based there flying 737s. So, but it is a little different.
And control. Okay. Go ahead, Councilmember Albritton.
Well, that's all. I'm looking at this as maybe a way that we can be a better service to the neighbors with less intensity. But I'm not 100% convinced because I don't know, I know kind of the framework of what you're talking about, and if it works out, it'll be a good thing. If it doesn't, then we go back to square one and I guess we put a little more time into it to see what we come up with. But I know that FDOT has already, we've taken advantage of some of their funding for some hangars out there. And I know the shade hangars, a lot of those are in really disrepair. They need to be replaced.
They are.
So I'm willing to give this a shot to see where we go next week. I mean, it could fall apart next week. And then I think we have staff that can negotiate and see where we come up with it.
Councilmember Teixeira.
This is one of very rare issues where I can empathize with each view in the truest sense. I understand how it could affect your life as a resident, having helicopters go over your home all the time. However, one of my most wonderful memories was going in a helicopter with a student and seeing her excitement and seeing Clearwater from up there. I also empathize with those who want things not to change. Change is scary. And then those who want progress. And I can understand each side of it. So it makes it difficult. But at the end of the day, I agree with your statement, balance. That has always been a word that's been very important to me. With my medical degree, I really respect balance, especially when it comes to the human body. And you can see that in the environment and the economy. So if we do enter into negotiations, there are several things that are important to me, and that is to establish that balance, or at least try to, the balance between the neighborhoods and how to have a successful park. And hopefully early on, clear expectations from what is expected from the city and what is expected from Fly USA in regards to numbers, in terms of capital, renovations, and what is Clearwater going to be responsible for? What are they? And I'm hoping that it's going to be early on that we get those clear, that becomes clear. Because right now it looks like I'm looking through a foggy pair of glasses. And I'm hoping that early on in the negotiations, if that goes forward, that becomes clear quickly.
Yeah, I think I spoke to this earlier. Normally, we would have upon the committee selection, entered in negotiations, and come back to you with an agreement to review and approve. So this is a little different in a sense that we wanted the public's input and we wanted that dialogue. So that's why this one is different. We're asking today simply to negotiate, and we would return to council with a negotiated agreement for your ultimate approval or rejection.
I have been writing down a lot of the comments from the residents, but well, actually from everybody, and trying to kind of keep a list so that when the negotiations start, I don't forget any of the opinions expressed. Because again, balance, I think, is going to be the only way to go forward.
Eric, how was this advertised? I mean, obviously, we advertised the RFP. Were all the tenants at the air park made aware? Obviously, Mr. King knew about it because he was participating in the RFP.
Yeah, and I don't know if David shared with his tenants that we were going through the process. I'm unsure of that.
Did you, David?
I'm sorry?
Can you come up real quick? Did you tell all your tenants, all the residents of the air park, that this RFP process was coming forward? No?
We didn't send an announcement out to them, but some of the people knew, some of the people didn't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I know how that air park is.
Yeah.
I mean, I know some of the old guys that used to be there, like Buzz Hutchin and Cliff Taylor, and there's a communication system out there, generally. Start beating the drums and everybody finds out what's going on, but I don't know. Okay.
I have to say, it's really hard to not say anything. I sit back here and I sit on my hands.
Okay. I think Mr. Fryer's, is it Fryer? Comment was a good one. What do you really want the air park to be? The master plan really should drive that, and that's what some people base their decisions upon and the way that they present it. Certainly, the air park needs to be more self-sufficient, and there are improvements that need to be made. And probably we looked at the penny for Pinellas list earlier tonight, and at some point, we probably ought to be allotting some penny for Pinellas money for the air park. We certainly have done it with other enterprise funds when we needed it with the Marina and elsewhere. I think it's disingenuous at this point to completely back away from the process. I mean, we've started a process, and then to take a pause, I frankly don't think is fair to the applicants, regardless of who the applicant would be. I want to thank Mr. King, because he's really been a good communicator, at least with me. We've met with Mr. Scalzo. Mr. Scalzo has my cell phone, so I hear from him a lot. Texts and phone calls, usually on Easter and other Sundays, which is fine. Most people have my cell phone. And as I stated on Monday, I have some concerns. I don't like how the parking garage on the beach worked out. I can't blame that on one of the partners. I need to blame that on the city. It was a bad deal, and we're out of it now. So, but I think we ought to at least go forward with negotiations and see where the FDOT money is or is not, which will be a determining factor of, if this particular proposal works out. I do think within a contract, we need to put some parameters on what our expectations are for the existing tenants, for the neighborhood, for what we can expect from different uses on the property, from flight school for fixed wing to helicopters. And then, as you said, Mr. Gandy, which I know you're a rule keeper, coming from our police department for as many years as you were there, then we need to make sure that we enforce those rules. But my belief is that we ought to at least go forward with the negotiations from the committee and see where that, no pun intended, lands us. And it will come back to the council. Citizens will get another bite of the apple at that point. But I think that should be the next step. Mr. Jennings, do you have anything to add?
No, sir.
Anything else from council? Vice Mayor?
I hope it's a good deal. I mean, I hope the numbers line up. I hope it's real transparent with the financials and that it's very clear to residents as well as people who utilize the airport what to expect and then have that enforced, whatever we do going forward, you know?
Well, we're gonna have the last look, so,
We have, but we have the last look and we have a November 30th deadline. So how would it play out if we have the contract is negotiated over the next, I don't know, 3 weeks or 4 weeks? We don't have another meeting, do we?
Well, first of all, Mr. King, I don't know if he's willing to continue to operate in the interim. He is not.
No, I am, I'm just kidding.
Okay. So, problem averted.
Okay. I mean, that's kind of what I was thinking as far as an extension, is that there isn't pressure to just make it work by November 30th.
No, I don't think that's
Okay.
necessary.
That's fine, then that's
Because
what
if
I
this falls through, Mr. King is next in line.
Okay, that's what I was.
So I figured he was still going to be engaged, even though he's fooling around. The biggest thing tonight, though, was they tried to bribe me with lifesavers, you know? I mean,
It looks like
Barbara
it's
came up
working.
with the lifesavers, and she was a lifesaver, so I appreciate that, Barbara.
Yeah.
All right, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve that agenda item to
Moving
begin
forward
negotiations.
with the negotiations with Fly USA.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Gandy. 11.5.
Approve the 2023 City Council meeting schedule. Council members, based on the work session's discussion, I have amended the proposed schedule. Those meetings that conflict with the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council the work sessions have been moved to 1 p.m. And those dates are January 9th, January 12th, August 14, and November 13. I also, as directed at the work session, moved the January work session back a week. So now that work session is on Monday, January 9 at 1 p.m., and January 18 would be the council meeting.
Anyone from the public to speak to item 11.5? Any questions from council? Motion?
Move to approve item 11.5.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. 11.6. Folks, we appreciate you coming out, but if you could take the conversations into the hall, I would appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Appoint an individual to serve on the library board for an unexpired term through February 28, 2025. Council members, in your agenda packs, you had 10 applicants for your consideration. Christine Delegan, Angela Gates, Lawrence Jaffe, Kelly Malizia, Pamela Mastroserio, Joseph Smiley, Linda Stuckey, Sharon Wood, Alexandra Vangeli, and Deborah Wilson for your consideration.
We discussed some of these folks on Monday. Some good applications. Nice to see how many people want to be on this advisory board. Had some different opinions, obviously. So, Councilmember Albritton and then the Vice Mayor.
Well, I had a chance to really go over the list since Monday. We've really had some great people that were signed up. I think that even though I had said that Pam Mastroserio, that I mentioned her name on Monday, it seems to me that probably the best fit for this is Kelly Malaysia. She's a librarian for 16 years, so it seems like she would be a good fit.
Vice Mayor?
Well, I too agree. These were phenomenal applicants overall. I went through and I eliminated people where we already have a representative from that zip code. And then I eliminated people who had not watched or attended a board meeting. And I think Christine Dulligan is great. She's an avid volunteer in a variety of organizations. She's a graduate of Citizens Academy, where we encourage participants to get involved in advisory boards. Excellent responses that indicate her enthusiasm to bring ideas to the table, especially in conjunction with the library and activation of Imagine Clearwater. So she was great. And then also, I thought Sharon Smallwood was phenomenal. She's a former SPC instructor, teacher, media specialist. She's taught reading. She's very well versed in offerings of libraries and how they can be utilized. Excellent application and responses, excellent work experience. She has a PhD. She knows our community, communicates enthusiasm and excitement to bring ideas to the board, to collaborate, willingness to look closely and advise, and she has extensive experience working with diverse multicultural populations. So I thought those two women, Sharon Smallwood and Christine Dulligan, their applications really stood out to me.
Other comments? Councilmember Bunker.
On Monday, I said I like Angela Gates, but I also said that we have such an incredible roster that I'd be happy with pretty much anyone we decide.
Councilmember Teixeira.
So I spoke to Ms. Mastrosario. I just wanted to make sure that she was still interested, and she is. But she's such a gracious lady. She acknowledged that all the applicants were wonderful. I'm trying to get a consensus here. So with the zip codes, that would leave my second choice to be Melissa, the librarian.
Kathleen Melisa.
Yes.
All right, so do I have a motion for Ms. Melisa?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.
Wait, I didn't vote. And wasn't there a discussion? I mean, do we have a discussion of that, or no? The discussion's already done? Okay, well, it wasn't unanimous. I don't think her responsibilities were quite accurate in her application when she responded about what the responsibilities of an advisory board member. So I'm not going to vote for Kelly Melisa. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 4-1 with the vice mayor in opposition. Anything else, Mr.?
Most of the citizens left. I assume they were all here for city attorney reports. This is shocking development.
Nothing, Mr. Margolis? Mr. Jennings, anything?
No, sir.
All right. And then the new city hall site?
I have no idea why that's.
I don't either, but.
I think we're done. I mean,
Great.
Yeah.
Closing comments. Councilmember Teixeira.
Well, this was a long one. I just wanted to wish everyone a good week, and I'll just leave it at that.
Councilmember Bunker.
Okay, mine's a little longer. I just want to say that there are newspapers all across the globe who are struggling. Wherever you are, subscribe to your local newspaper. Here, we're lucky enough to have the Tampa Bay Times and Tracy McManus, who is a top-notch reporter covering city government, and also the beat reporter on Scientology, and she does a magnificent job there. And her latest article, combining the two, came out this past week, and I was very disturbed to find out that the affordable project that we had 4-1 voted to have at the old firehouse was lost largely because of Scientology's meddling and the city's efforts to appease David Miscavige. In Tracy's article, the developer Sean Wilson said Scientology didn't pressure him in any way, but I find that hard to believe when it was clear in the emails between the developer and Mr. Jennings that Scientology's point person on this project, Sarah Heller, kept calling the developer even after he begged her to stop. And that's Scientology's playbook. Do what it takes to win. Be relentless. I mean, I saw it at a TV station when I was working in San Diego. We were going to air a report on Scientology that I put together. They called nonstop. They sent letters and emails, and even hours before it was to air, they came to our gates to try to stop it. And we didn't buckle. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case here. Despite all of our best efforts, the developer said, on this city-sponsored concept, there is still a great deal of uncertainty about what is best for the city of Clearwater as he walked away with the project. And unfortunately, that's the message that this gives, that we're not sure what we want to happen downtown Clearwater. Scientology wanted the property, and you offered to facilitate the discussions, hoping to swap the land so a great big shiny L. Ron Hubbard Museum could be hidden away where fewer people would see it. Well, I mean, it definitely should stay hidden, just like Hubbard spent the last 10 years of his life hiding in the desert, afraid that he would be sent to prison like his wife and 10 other top Scientologists who had been sent to prison for espionage against the U.S. government and the government of Clearwater. I don't think we should forget that. And what angered me the most is that I didn't know that you and the mayor had been in on this maneuvering, and according to Tracy's article, none of the rest of us were aware that this was part of it. The council voted 4-1 for this affordable housing project, and the mayor voted no because he wanted the property to be used in a land swap with Scientology. Now,
No, Mr. Bunker, that's not true.
Well,
So,
that's, that was one of the things you mentioned when we took the vote, that you thought there were better.
first of all, I
better
wasn't
uses
involved
for it.
in any maneuvering whatsoever, okay?
So Tracy was wrong that you weren't knowledgeable about what was happening here?
I heard that the deal was falling through, but I wasn't involved in anything. I didn't talk to anybody, and you ought to be careful again, because you just shoot your mouth off.
Yep, that's what I'm good at, but you're here to respond.
Yeah, and I'm
Set the
going
record
to.
straight.
I'm going to. I didn't think that project should go there because I didn't think affordable housing should be in the downtown core.
But 4 of us said we wanted it there, and we approved it.
And that's
then suddenly
fine.
it was derailed.
I wasn't the one that derailed it, so I just want to make sure you are making accusations that aren't true.
All right.
And I'm not going to let them
retract
stand.
I retract.
So I said that on the campaign trail. I didn't think that there ought to be affordable housing in the downtown core. I think you need people that have money that can be spent in the downtown core.
Well,
So-
whoever would be living in affordable housing, they'd be able to go out to a restaurant and buy a meal from time to time.
I understand that.
And we've got big, huge 600 apartments being constructed there now as well. So
Well,
thankfully, those
we'll see.
didn't fall through. I hope Miscavige doesn't want those properties. Anyway, Miscavige is not the city's partner. He is essentially the head of a crime syndicate, and we should be helping Tampa federal judge Thomas Barber, who just issued a summons days ago to serve Miscavige in a human trafficking case from which Miscavige has been hiding, just as Hubbard hid out in the desert as his time leading Scientology came to an end. Miscavige is not serving Clearwater, so we should make sure he is served.
Vice Mayor.
Well, I wanted to say thank you to all the people who showed up and spoke about concerns, whether it were the Mercado or the air park, and I appreciate that civic engagement. I just want to, I guess, since Councilmember Bunker brought it up, I just want to reiterate my disappointment in that we did take a 4-1 vote on that blue sky housing development, and I was so excited about the development that was coming. They had asked for extra funding from us, that we put in another 1.8 million. They asked for extra funding from the county to make it work. It was exciting to know that our staff spent 2 years working on that with the developer. It was really nice apartments for 60% or lower AMI, which we have significant need for. It's great. It's next to mass transit, jobs. And it was, I was super excited about it. So I was also profoundly disappointed to read that it fell through, and really confused about who was negotiating or who was talking about possibilities of something else there. Because as Councilmember Bunker said and Tracy reported, and I too am a champion of journalism, is that nobody came to me and said, hey, I know we voted for this 4-1, but I'd like to, have it back on the table to discuss the possibility of swapping it or having it for something else. So I didn't know those discussions were going on, and I didn't know that Blue Sky was struggling financially, and I had reached out to Blue Sky a number of times in multiple ways and did not get a response back. So that was troubling as well. It's not about, I'm not going to get into the church wanting it or manipulating. It would be any other person that might want it for something else. It's not about that. It's about the vote that we had taken and the understanding that housing was going to go there. For me, that's what that's about.
Councilmember Albritton.
Well, we had our first meeting the other night, yes for Clearwater. That's a meeting about explaining what the referendum's going to be in November. Island Way Grill, I think they had a good turnout there. We're going to see a lot more of those meetings. I know the mayor's set up to go around the city. I'm doing the same thing. I'm going to try to hit the beaches and some of those areas to advocate for this project, because it's very, very important. In November, this referendum has to be yes, because it'll be a restart for the downtown that we've been looking at for 30 years. And we're making great headway on it. I think we just need to keep going and advocating for it and explaining to our citizens how this is going to be a good thing. And I'm sure all of us up here on the dais are going to do the same thing. So be on the lookout for that. We'll try to get on radio, and we'll try to get into your neighborhoods and have meetings with your neighborhood people to explain it and answer any questions as well.
Mr. Jennings.
Mayor, I'm sorry that I want to take some time right now, because I've really grown tired of the attacks on my character. To say that I never spoke with you, Vice Mayor, I spoke with you on several occasions about how the deal was falling through. And I've decided to put everything in writing at this point, because this has happened a couple of times now where I have had these conversations. I get thrown under the bus. There's an article written that isn't complete. The only reason I was involved with this was to avoid the L. Ron Hubbard Museum going on a location that was the old tequilas between Court and Chestnut. So people were not going to the beach and coming from the beach, and that's what they were seeing. When I found out they were having some financial issues, I didn't proactively talk to them about that. And so there was a discussion with the developer and Scientology about a different location. When the state said that they would not agree to move the funds to a new location, I sent an email, which is part of the record, to the developer saying, unfortunately, this is not going to happen. I was under the assumption that the developer was going to move forward with the affordable housing project at the fire station. All I was trying to do was to make sure the L. Ron Hubbard Museum was not greeting everyone coming and going. And so I think that this narrative that the paper has perpetuated, that I'm not talking with you, is inaccurate. And I'm just not going to stand any longer to be having the bus run over me without defending myself.
That wasn't my intent, and I apologize if you took it that hard.
Well,
But from Tracy's article, and I believe she's probably accurate in this, that Scientology reached out to the developer and said, hey, we want that property. And Ms. Cabbage was offering a property that a Scientologist parishioner owned on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, and I forget the other intersection here. Why doesn't he put the L. Ron Hubbard Museum there?
the point, Councilmember Bunker, was to make the affordable housing project viable. So if they were given the property, they could have made the numbers work. And when that did not happen because the state did not approve the transfer of the location, that's when I washed my hands of it, recognized that the L. Ron Hubbard Museum was probably going to go at Court in Chestnut, but that was the reason why I was involved. Trying to do what was best for the city, in my opinion. I had no belief that the affordable housing project would go away.
But it wouldn't have gone away if we had just said to Scientology, I'm sorry, there's a deal here, and...
But I didn't do that. I wasn't involved in that. I spoke with the developer. He said he was having financial issues, even with the additional funds.
Just like the other affordable housing projects that we're looking at, that we gave more money to this past week on consent.
Right, but it doesn't seem like that's the full story.
Well, I don't know, but the way you characterize things is very unfair. So, I've got a real problem with it. And you know what? I don't mind 4-1 votes. It's okay.
Yeah.
Just like tonight. I think you're all completely wrong about City Hall, and I think that will be proven out. But it's okay. I can take a 4-1 vote. But don't characterize that I had anything to do to undermine that project. Or you and I can settle it outside.
Oh, come on.
Vice Mayor, you have something else? Because these really are closing comments. Are we done?
I was just going to ask, why do you think Blue Sky didn't come back to us for some more money, or the county, if they were having some financial difficulties?
I'm not sure. I have no idea. I'm not in their, I was never in their discussions in terms of their pro forma, but I will say that the two affordable housing projects that you just worked on this week and that we're bringing before the council either in October or November, both had significant revenue shortages. And the Blue Sky funding that was freed up is now going into, if the council will support it, the South Washington project, which is 173 units of housing.
Thank you.
All right, we're adjourned.